you wanted to challenge me on secular Koranism, and perhaps a number of other things, and I'm your sitting duck and shoot away.
Okay. So yeah, the main reason I got motivation to do this stream is, I saw you did a post about no one can ever challenge me and their arguments are all invalid. That's probably true for many people, but I feel I have actually already refuted many things you've said, at least on Facebook. But as far as the overarching idea of secular Koranism compared with, let's say, my overall idea of ethos, I think they are both effective and, at promising ideas for the modern degraded West compared with, let's say, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, which is like a fun little book you read once and then quickly forget.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, what you and I are both doing is good, but I guess what we're really talking about is which one is more good, and but also, we're approaching these from the opposite angle. So you're taking the Quran, which I would describe as revealed scripture, and you're making it, you're kind of taking the holy part out of it and making it just secular. I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking a secular text from Aristotle and turning it into scripture, essentially. It doesn't have to be divine, personal monotheism type scripture, but that's what my book is, Ethos. It's a Bible. It's with chapter and verse, and it's designed so that you can, quote a verse in the same way that, religious people will quote the Bible or the Quran or anything else like that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But our aim is, I think, the same actually, in that we're at least putting some kind of attempt to do some kind of mitigation of damage against the modern, thoroughly degraded Western world.
why do you think the Western world is degraded? What is this thing that degrades the West, in your view?
First of all, what is the West? I think the West, in a single word, is logos, and the East, in a single word, is dharma. And I think eventually we will actually see a degradation of dharma too, and that's starting now, but it's just very slow, and it may not even happen fully in my lifetime. But the church has been the primary progenitor of logos in the West. The church basically is the West for
Maybe you could
more
stop.
than 1,000 years.
Maybe I could slow you down a little and ask you what you understand by logos, and maybe get you to understand what you mean by dharma, and go on to
Mm.
more detail.
Yes, yes. So these words are very, esoteric. There's like dharma, you can translate to 100 different ways, but basically dharma is duty. So when you think of, Japanese people who will just like, hi, hi, yes, sir, I just do what you say. I no think, I do what you say. That's dharma. Or the familial piety in China, where it's just, obey elders. We must obey elders. That's all we do. These are dharmic ways of living in the world, which is very effective when you do it right. And then logos is rationality, law and order and speech and truth. You could also call it a kind of left brain approach, whereas dharma is more like a right brain or harmonizing of the two hemispheres. If you want, there's many different ways to make analogies here, but a logos based approach is, oh, you're telling me to put a mask on while I go outside. I know that's stupid. I've looked over the research, so I'm not going to fucking do it. Period. Because I know it's the truth and I just follow the truth, which does also work very well when you do it right. But there's a downside to logos and there's a downside to dharma. So, it
What might
depends
they?
really how you do it. Mhm.
What might these downsides be?
Well, that's what I think we're seeing in America, where the polarizing, divisive nature of it, where my truth could be very different from your truth, and if we both are severely propelled by logos, we can wage war with our own family very easily. Whereas, in the Dharmic East, you can wage war if you need to, but it's really rare for that stuff to happen. What's more common is you bite your pride, and even if you know something stupid, your conscience tells you it's dumb, you just go, well, I have to be a student, I have to be a coworker, whatever position you're in, you just obey the dharma of that position, and because that's your fundamental essence of who you are, basically, and things will eventually turn out right. And another aspect of why it works is you have reincarnation in Buddhism, Hinduism, and all these other Eastern ones. So you can even suffer your entire life, but you'll know, oh, well, in the next life, I'll be rewarded because I did what I was supposed to do in this life. So it's very slow progress in the East. I think,
Okay,
for that.
I'll tell you what I understand by logos and dharma. So dharma, would it be correct to say that dharma is is about behavior and ethics, and that's what you're about, because you call yourself ethos?
Well, ethos is in a way transcendental to both logos and dharma. That's why I'm really excited to work with it and talk about it, because ethos is like the way in which you do things. So you can have a good ethos while following logos, and that will be good, and you can have a good ethos while following dharma, and that will be good. So it applies to both ways of doing things. It's just, are you excellent or are you sucky at something? That's ethos, basically.
I sort of feel that we need to define these words properly, because we basically want people listening to sort of go away and say, yeah, Ananda said that ethos is, and then they can say it in one sentence, and logos they can also say, say what you think it is in one sentence, and if we disagree on that, they can say, oh, but Claire thinks ethos, logos, and dharma is this other thing. But if I could just quickly explain what I think the problem is. So logos, you say, is, well, the truth. What is observable and true. If you think about it long enough, but then you say that people in the West disagree, and I think the reason why they disagree is because there is a lack of this hierarchy that you get in the East, because there's this very distinct idea of hierarchy in the East, that you respect your elders, and this is something the West used to do. And therefore, employer, employee, you have a right to tell me what to do because you're the one who pays my wages, and therefore, in a way, that resolves the conflict, because that there's no point arguing with your king when you're a lowly peasant. You just have to obey, but at least things are properly ordered. But if everybody thinks they're equal to each other, then they'll be saying to each other, well, who are you to tell me what to do? Even if you're right, and you can't make me because you ain't got no army. You may be right, but I won't do it, because that's how they roll. Because they spent entire lifetimes ignoring truth, logic, and morality, and they'd say things like, well, that may be your truth, but it's not my truth, and well, isn't truth completely objective? That it's true regardless of what you feel, or whether your feelings are hurt by it or not.
Yes.
And it's a corruption of the discourse that makes it almost impossible to get your ideas through. And even when you do finally, win all the arguments, they'll say, well, you can't make me do what you say is right. And even if you are right, I won't do it.
Yeah, one aspect here is the hierarchy, as you say. That's quite on the money. But it's way more than that. Like, from me, as someone who's lived for 5-6 years in not only in the East, but I've lived in some really rural areas, learned the local languages. Like, I've fully immersed here, and from my perspective, I don't know where to begin to describe the degradation in modern Western Anglo-Saxon nations, especially. Whereas, if you go to like some place in Peru, maybe it's not so bad. And also like rural Lithuania, where I'm trying to go, or Poland, Eastern Europe is, it's like not so bad. But England, America, Canada, oh my goodness. So yeah, there's no clear hierarchy. And even when there is a hierarchy, you just, it's not the dominating culture. The dominating culture in America, from what I've noticed, is money. Basically, it's like, I'll do what my boss says because he pays my wages, and then as soon as I find someone who pays me more, I just say "fuck you, see you later," and that's being a prostitute essentially.
Well, I don't see that you owe your lifetime service to any employer, and I don't see a problem in moving up on the career ladder and going to what pays you more. But I think, I mean, if you think about the military, it's like there's no argument about who is higher in rank or lower in rank. And and that is what is necessary for it to work as a military unit. Otherwise, that you'll have the soldier saying to the general, "Well, you go and risk your life and them to attack that place, because why should I, if we're all equal, and nothing would work and you'd lose all your wars and that'd be the end of you." Because your enemy only has to evolve a more efficient, way of operating their military, and you're lost. So basically, this is it. And all this sort of whinging about China is that China has the more effective political system. It concentrates all its political talents in one party, and it nurtures that talent. It trains them properly. They get better leaders. They correct their mistakes. They don't sit on it and wait for the next election when things become even shittier, so they can blame whoever they want to blame, and then think, well, why is China overtaking us? And it's like, yeah, because you have a shit political system. You won't admit it's wrong, and you're going to be in an even worse way. So even if Trump wins the election, they'll be stuck in, Democrats and Republicans will still be stuck in deadlock, and nothing will be done. No promises will be kept, and well, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's still trouble.
Yeah, of course.
And nobody's going to say, well, obviously democracy is not working. They won't say that because it's a sacred cow that,
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to get at, is where are the sacred cows? Like, where are the dominating parts of the culture, which is in fact what people actually follow and how they live their life. So what I saw growing up is people talk about truth and talk about the right thing to do, and then I would see their behavior go contrary to that, and I'd go, huh? What's going on here?
Would you like to give us an example? Just because people like to tell stories.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many. Maybe it's literally causing me pain to think of an example, so I should just
okay. I mean, we can move on. I mean, I know. I guess I was, hoping for a political example, but people don't keep their promises. They don't mean what they say, and
that's good enough.
And if no promises are kept, then nobody believes in anything. They can only think in the short term, and this will make them really horrible people.
Yes. So I want to go back to like the big picture sort of thing here. So if I say logos is like the the culture of truth, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the West is falling because that culture is degrading. So the truth is still there. The truth is always objective. It's always there for anyone who wants to find it and see it. It is there.
Mm-hmm.
But the kind of wisdom culture around that, which was not entirely the church, but it was for many centuries, and then the Italian Renaissance came around, and that was like a nice golden age where we were combining things. And then it seems like the Enlightenment is where things got really bad, and like it's like we have all these cool toys, these cool science toys, but because there's no culture around why we're making them and why we're just blindly obeying the science says do this, so we must do this. There's no culture of truth. It's just somebody tells you that it's truth, and then you're just supposed to follow it. So you could actually say that the West right now is living in a dharmic society, but because they have no idea how to actually be dharmic, it's a total mess.
Oh, you mean, when you say dharmic, do you mean hierarchical? That the scientist is now king?
Yeah, there is a definite hierarchy, but it's so difficult to see. It's all castles made of sand, but like it's there because when you get fired from your job or you're canceled or banned on a platform, like that was someone higher in the hierarchy, making a power move on someone lower in the hierarchy, but we just don't have a clear conception of what that hierarchy really is.
Well, okay, I can tell you what I think the problem is, and it's because the rules are not clear, so we don't know. They don't have to tell us why they, gave us a strike on YouTube, or, sometimes they don't even tell you why you are given the sack. They might cook up some reason that is not the real reason, and refuse to tell you the real reason, because they might get sued for discrimination or whatever. So what the people above us can do to exploit us and abuse us is to do something to us and not give a reason, and say they don't have to give a reason, because if they give a reason, at least you can challenge it. They think you steal, and you say I didn't, and what did I steal anyway, or whatever. At least you can challenge it in some way. But if they never gave you a reason, you can't ever challenge it.
Right. So Claire, this idea of a leader, imposing some sort of tyrannical thing on a subject and not giving a reason why, that's dharma. And that's what I've experienced in China countless times. And it's totally fine there because they've been doing it for thousands of years. So they've developed a whole culture around it, where like when someone in China will say just anything like, oh, do this, and I just say, yeah, sure, why not? Because they the way they enforce it at the ground level is so sheepish, and it's just it's so detached. Nobody's actually enforcing any. I just say, yeah, whatever, no problem. And if there is a problem, I just say, hey, here's a problem, and then we just work through it. I got distracted there. What were you saying before?
I was basically saying that we won't have our rights protected if we don't even know what they are, and
yes.
Can't.
Okay.
And when people
I remembered it now. Mm-hmm. Hold on one sec. So YouTube and these other big tech guys and whatever other crappy Western power people are doing, they're doing the same dharmic thing I see in the East, but because they're doing it in a Western culture that doesn't know what this we're expecting them to give us a reason why, and then we can deal with that reason in a court of law with innocence until proven guilty. We have this whole Western logos-based structure around our life. It's mostly dead, right? It's degrading and crippling and dying.
Well, they don't even follow their own rules. You see, that is really the problem. I mean, what I can remember about the West is, the conception of the West as a good thing is that there is the rule of law. People are treated as innocent until found guilty after a fair trial. You are never supposed to have to prove your innocence, that kind of thing. That's the idea. You get, not only do you get a trial, there's a criminal standard of proof which is a heavier burden than the civil standard of proof, and then if it's a crime, you get a jury, and the jury have to all think that you did do it beyond reasonable doubt. And I'm thinking of this conservative former minister who's been charged with rape. And
oh my.
Yeah, and nobody quite knows who he is, but I'm sure there are some circles who know exactly who he is. But anyway, his ex basically said he did, all these things to me, and he forced me to have sex with him, but it wasn't even. It was during the course of the relationship, which has gone bad, and then she decides to accuse him of rape, and it's like, no, rape is, some sex offender jumping out from behind the bushes, that kind of thing. Not we broke up, therefore I wished I never had sex with him, and therefore he raped me.
Yeah, in that situation, you could claim sexual harassment if you wanted to, but yeah, what you're saying is right. Rape is a serious, violent crime that it doesn't sound like that's what happened in that case. But I don't know about this minister guy.
Well, I mean, nobody. His name. They're still trying to protect his name, and basically they're saying, oh, but we should know who he is, and he should be, suspended or whatever. And the thing is, if you are suspended over something like that, it takes, I think, about a year for the thing to come to trial, or a good few months, and in the meantime, your employer loses the use of your services. You are in disgrace basically, and so what is one to do? I mean, this seems clear to me. You may know I'm legally trained, and therefore I know what they used to do in the olden days when women would go to the police and complain about rape, and she would be asked, do you have any independent evidence other than your word against his? Did somebody, see you come out of the room in a distressed state, with your clothes torn, blah, blah, blah. And if she said no, and it happened 20 years ago as, that, and it was Judge Kavanaugh who did, it's like, no, you just wouldn't get heard. You'd be told to go away. And for some reason, all these claims are being entertained. And then, okay, I know you don't subscribe to anything in the Old Testament, but basically in Deuteronomy chapter 19 verse 15, there is this verse that protects any man's right, saying no man shall be convicted of any crime with on the testimony of only one witness. That's what it says. And it's fair enough, because accusations are very easy to make by somebody who harbours malice and wants to destroy you. They can say anything about you, that you're a murderer, you're a sex offender, you're a thief, anything. They can just make it up on the spot.
Okay, so I got a lot more clarity while listening to you, in many ways actually. But on the one hand, I'm thinking in America, for example, the Founding Fathers specifically said that this system is meant for a moral, religious people. And within a culture of moral and religious people, such as myself, you can clearly see that the U.S. Constitution, 90% of the time, the way how this system is set up is like beautiful. It's a masterpiece. But what we have now is a culture of amoral, atheistic people, and of course all this crap is happening. Now, on the other hand, you mentioned Deuteronomy and the Old Testament, and this is one point of my challenge is the Quran and the Old Testament are, to me, quite similar in the sense that they're, Abrahamic, quite old kind of scriptures. Now, I can see how the Quran is more, it's much more recent, and Islam has seen much success, but For many in the West, I think the way to really effectively introduce and use the Quran is not in a secular sense. I think you, just like with the Bhagavad Gita, I think you really need to accept the spiritual theological aspect to it as well. Like, you have to actually make it into a bona fide religion, and then it works. I think that's why Islam has worked so well for so many centuries, is because it has that extra spiritual potency.
Oh yeah. I would tend to dismiss the Eastern religions because, okay, I'm really focusing on the West, and obviously, it has its, imperium that I guess it wants to try and maintain, and therefore, the reason why for its success may be to do with its cultural and historical inheritance of you know it's Judeo-Christian heritage. So it does base itself on the rule of law. I mean, even the Ten Commandments is a very basic example of the rule of law. You know what the rules are. Everybody in your community who subscribes to this system is supposed to know it, and this is the thing about any moral system, that it's enforced. So there are penalties if you break them, and people are supposed to know, what is the law and what is against the law. So we know how to stay out of trouble, or know what to expect if we break the law, and it has to be, it has to happen, because if you see enough people breaking the law, you might think, well, I'll get away with it if I do the same thing. So therefore, little things matter. Shoplifting. All the little things have to be enforced in order that the big things are also followed. But I guess over the years, because of the sex revolution after the swinging 60s, and unmarried parenthood, I'm sure you already know my views, and the lack of good parenting, and everything slides down into, matriarchy.
So in terms of the little crimes versus the big crimes, what I experienced growing up, and what I think is still true largely in America, is too much focus on every little crime by the book with very little mercy. And then, of course, we know the famous case of a big crime, the Jeffrey Epstein case, which is just like, oh yeah, well, we put a camera on him, we can't seem to find the footage, and the Madoff case, like, these massive crimes are going completely unpunished. Now in the East, you find the opposite, where in Thailand and other places I've lived, it says right in the Constitution, you must have a license to ride a motorcycle. You must wear your helmet. And I will drive around all day with no license, sometimes no helmet, and the police will stop me. He'll say, "Hey, how's it going, Sawadee Cop? Welcome to my country. Oh, looks like you don't have a helmet here, but if you give me just like $5, $10, I'll smile. I'll keep being polite to you. You go on your way." And I say, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." And it's a very peaceful society in that sense, because all the little crimes they don't really care about. But then the big crimes that happen, yeah, there's still beheadings. You've heard of the Duterte leadership over there. Mm-hmm. They know how to do big punishment for big crimes still, and I think that's why there's much more a sense of law and order in the East, even though it's not. They don't really do the law; they do guanxi. That's the Chinese word. It's the relationships. So there's corruption in an external sense, where in most Eastern countries, except for like Japan or Singapore, like the really top tier ones, you can pretty much pay your way out of most crimes. But if you can't pay for it, and you don't have any special relationships, and you're not acting decently, yeah, they'll lock you in a cage and throw away the key, which And people know this. Like, they know if they don't have connections, if they don't have money, like, they're going to get screwed without a fair trial and all this stuff. So there's justice in the air. You can really sense it just kind of walking around.
Well, I suppose there is a sense of hierarchy, more a sense of hierarchy in the East, because they know they wouldn't, be cheeky to Xi Jinping or, Duterte or the King of Thailand, because it's an imprisonerable offence to say, disobliging things about the Thai king, isn't it? So people kind of know their place in that way, but with the way the Americans are behaving towards their president and the media, it's like, yeah, we know you're fighting amongst yourselves, and it seems that the fight is pretty much even Stevens, in that half the people of America seem to like Trump, and the other half don't, and that is what is so destabilizing. And they're doing the dirty, they're calling out BLM, that's part of their rent-a-mob, the rent-a-mob of the Democrats, and the Democrat politicians are quite happy to say, yeah, this is what should happen. We don't.
Claire,
sorry.
Would you agree that many things we have in the West, such as the U.S. Constitution, natural law, and many other, like our universities, like if you take the external shell of a lot of these institutions, they're actually quite good, but the problem is really the people inside them and the culture itself. So if we keep the institutions and the laws and the constitutions and all that, but we just change ourselves from being shitty people to being excellent people, will that kind of be a good enough solution for the West?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I would agree, and my thesis is really that no matter how perfect your political system is, it will go wrong if the people who run it are shits, hypocrites, and incompetent. And we have to ask ourselves why so many bad people are in government. Why no politician will stand up for principle, and no one, no media outlet will actually have a rational discussion about all the things that we want to discuss and ask them about. And basically, I think it is so simple. I mean, I think everybody else gets it about government. They're supposed to govern in their national interest. So, occasionally when they ask us to make sacrifices, pay higher taxes, or wear masks, or whatever, we'll do it because we trust them. But because Western governments have been lying to their voters for so many decades, we just want to do the opposite because they told us to. Because, we suspect some conspiracy, some trick, some faction that they wish to enrich or something. Well, people will obediently put on their masks, thinking, well, the government isn't doing this for nothing. And of course, the irony of it is that the Chinese seem to care more about their people than Western leaders do about their own, because they say herd immunity. Not that I don't, agree that the herd immunity must be the answer, because nobody will follow the rules. So, it's going to go round, and a lot of people are going to get it, and they're going to die because they keep having their demos and rioting and passing it to each other.
So one thing about China, one of my good Chinese friends said, it wasn't immediately once the outbreak started, but a few months later, they started offering free medical care to everyone who is getting infected, and they totally switched the tables, where all of a sudden people said, "Oh, I want to go to the hospital. I don't mind if I get infected. I'll get a free stay, and they'll treat me all nice." And yes, on the outside, yes, it looks like the Chinese leadership are caring more for their own. But if you look a little deeper, I think you'll see that they're just trying to keep their slaves in good, healthy condition to do more slave work, right?
Exactly,
And
and in the West,
yeah,
you have nurses saying, well, it'll unblock the bed blockers. Because, that there'll be lots of, old people, and we already know old people are more likely to get it, obese people, the elderly, and the kinds of rubbing their hands together and say, yeah, boomer remover, go, 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 and so the idea really is that, that there may be a grain or truth about it, that the people who are most likely to go are not particularly wanted, they won't be missed.
let's go back to the heart of the solution to the West. That is taking a crappy culture and making it good again, decent again.
But Christianity has failed. That's why everybody tells lies and looks after their own patch and stabs each other in the front and the back and cannot defend the principle.
Yes,
the religious,
yes.
that is really the problem. Christianity has failed, and when I point it out, people say, no, it ain't true. Go away. We don't want your Islam.
Yeah. So this is the one part I can challenge here. So, there are two or three acceptable stances or positions on Christ. One is the Islam. The typical Islamic position that Christ is a great prophet, worthy of respect, but not really more than that, kind of on the same line as Muhammad. And then, of course, there's a Christian perspective that he's the Son of God. And the unacceptable position is what you find in the Talmud, that he's a, son of a whore and he's burning an excrement. It's really good propaganda, but it's simply not acceptable considering the history of Christianity and the good things that have happened from it. Now, is Christianity what failed? Not exactly. It's the institution of Christianity that has failed. And because the institution was so strong and the people, look at E. Michael Jones, there's so many, he's clearly intelligent. As an intellectual, he's far superior to me, I think. But when it comes to certain issues, he'll just say, well, I'm a Catholic and that's, they tell me what to think in that sense and I just got to parrot that. And so when you have a strong institution like that where people just go along with it and then the institution gets infiltrated and conquered, as it clearly has, and now it's run by demons and pedophiles, then yeah, it's all going to crap. But at the heart of it, if you read the New Testament, if you read the gospel, if you take what Christ did in your heart and you fully accept it, just as you can fully accept Allah or Krishna or the Buddha's great service, there is absolute liberation and salvation in this, in its essence, in its purity. But the external part of it, yes, has failed miserably.
Okay, I would say that the reason why Christianity has failed is because of its inherent design defects. It's unbelievable that a lot of people now are having difficulties believing in God, but to be Christian, not only do you have to believe that God exists, but you have to believe that Christ is also God. And that's already idolatry, which is why Jews are so mean about Christ, or were when they took their own principles seriously.
How is that idolatry? It's a standard Christian belief that Christ is the Son of God, not God in totality. There's the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. So that's what it means to be a Christian. So
but just because you think Christians can't be idolaters doesn't mean that other religions don't think that you are. I mean, this is what basically the Jews and Muslims think.
They can think that, but they're wrong. That's a straw man. They
Why?
need to actually study the Testament.
If you worship something else that isn't God as God, then it's idolatry. And it's
No, but it
forbidden
is
by the
God.
Ten Commandments.
According to Christianity, Christ is God. He is the Messiah, the fulfillment of the Old
Yeah,
Testament.
prove it.
And
Prove it. You can't prove it.
yeah, no, it's easy to prove.
How?
There's so much proof. Oh my God, there was the number one rabbi. I forget his name. This was quite recent, about 10, 20 years ago, in Israel. He said, "Behold, everyone, I will reveal the Messiah that the Jews have been waiting for." What was it? Yeshua. And of course, what happened? What happened? Oh, like, the 20% of Jews in Israel said, "Wow, it's real, and now I'm a Christian." And then 80%, especially the leaders, said, "Oh, it's a lie.
It's heresy.
He's cheating us. It's heresy."
Yeah.
Oh. That's just because you're in power and you say something's real, not real, doesn't mean it's real. They're liars.
Okay, but we can, reason that.
That's Claire. That's one example. That if you look in the Old Testament for what the Messiah will be, he will be the son of this guy, and he will do this. He will do this kind of miracle. Christ did all of that. Like, I haven't gone through it because I don't care, but I've seen enough evidence where you can literally look at the Old Testament and the New Testament and say, yeah, wow, Christ really is the Messiah that was predicted and prophesied.
Well, I think a lot of people would deny that Christ is God, and you already have this tension.
Messiah, not God, Messiah.
Well, then what does that make Muhammad?
I would call him a Muslim Messiah or an Arabic Messiah.
Okay, but if you read the scripture, you will see that the Quran refers to Christ, refers to Mary, talks about the prophets of the Old Testament. So it's the self-referential nature of the different scriptures, because they talk about each other, and that's what allows us to group them together as the Abrahamic faith, because they're supposed to worship the same God, and there is a particular narrative to the Abrahamic God, and you've already said, he gave Jews the Torah, and he gave Gentiles the Quran, having divided humanity between Jew and Gentile, and Jews are his chosen people, chosen to do what? That would be the more interesting question.
It's all right. You could also, I don't know if this is the picture you're painting, but you could paint a natural theological evolution, starting with the Old Testament, then the New Testament, then the Quran, and it's just like a straight curve upward. Sure, that's fine. But when you talk about humanity, like all of humanity is only Jews or Gentiles, what about 3 billion Indians and Chinese? What about them?
Well,
they're more than half of humanity.
I'm glad you mentioned the Indians and the Chinese, because really, I don't know if you're aware of the no-hide laws, which were mentioned in the Babylonian Talmud, but they're basically saying, Jews were saying, well, we Jews, we have the highest moral standards of all, and for Gentiles, which is the rest of the world, I know that this is kind of what it really means. They can have a lower standard, and these are stated in the 7 no-hide laws, and the 10 commandments are really, no, actually, it's a 613 laws of God that the Jews were supposed to follow while they were still living in Israel, of course. So they're saying they have to observe the highest standards, and therefore they set the standards, and that they've set it according to the no-hide laws, and I know it triggers a lot of Gentiles saying, who are they? Because you don't accept their position as the chosen people of God, and what you're saying, they shouldn't dare tell you anything because of the whatever annoying thing they have done, but they have anyway. It's there. I know they don't like talking about it because they know how it triggers the Gentile, but the really useful thing about the no-hide laws is that they can use it to rank the four other the four Gentile religions according to how much they conform to the no-hide laws. And I would say, Islam is closest, or even above it. And everyone else, and I'm saying Christianity is right at the bottom because it's because of its idolatry and blasphemy, and we already know that according to the Christian narrative, Jesus was convicted of blasphemy. That's why, they wanted him dead, and they sent him to Pontius Pilate, who said, well, I can't see that he's done anything wrong, I wash my hands of the whole thing. But anyway, they wanted Christ dead, and they got him crucified. And the narrative
isn't that a horrible thing to do?
Sure, but that was, the Roman practice. It was the death penalty, and the Jews wanted him dead because blasphemy is a capital crime for Jews. And he did say his papa was God, and I'm afraid Christians have been confirming it. They've been confirming it for 2,000 years.
Okay, blasphemy is a universal part of theology and religion, but it only works when you blaspheme actual God and not some material world stuff. What happened at that time, to me it seems, is that Jesus Christ was blaspheming the Pharisees and their little scam they had going on, but he was not blaspheming God. He was, as what we would call in the Vedas, he was maintaining the Dharma. That was Christ's purpose, actually, was to blaspheme the real blasphemers and then get punished by them and then show people the way out who don't want to be part of their little Pharisee scam.
Okay, I don't really know what they're supposed to have done, but he did say that his father was God, didn't he?
Yeah.
So they focus on that, and he said, that's blasphemy. How dare you say that your father is God, and you were born of Mary.
Okay. Hold on. So at that time, yeah, sure, and that's all interesting. Whatever. Many
it's in John,
years ago. Who cares?
10:30.
Look, come to present day. Real spiritualists, such as myself, know that we are all God's children. It's not only true that Jesus Christ was a son of God. I am too, and you're a daughter of God, and so is the insects and the dinosaurs and everything else.
I'm afraid, it does say in the New Testament in John 10:30, because Christ does say, I and the Father are one.
Right. Well, that's where I think the Holy Trinity idea has come about.
Yeah, and Jews and Muslims are saying it's blasphemy to associate partners with God, and because they're only allowed to have mortal prophets. So,
yeah, it's a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, but look at present tense now. Like, it's hard for me to believe that the present day Jews are better than the present day Christians, because the Jews are in such a messy position. We can't even define them. Like, that's why one reason why E. Michael Jones had to write a 1,000-page book on this. It's like, we don't even know what to define what a Jew is. You say, oh, that's a Jew, and then they say, oh, no, this other guy's the Jew, and then this rabbi says, oh, well, I'm an atheist, and that's totally fine, and it's madness.
But will you allow the Jews to define themselves in the way they choose to define themselves? I'm afraid it's not up to us. And the halakhic definition of a Jew is somebody whose mother is a Jewess, and that is accepted.
Yes, Claire, they can do that. That's fine, and I and every other reasonable person will accept their definition when they give it to us. There is no consensus right now. So if you say, can we just go along with their idea that they can just do whatever they want and there's no such thing as like a agreed upon truth, then no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna go along with that.
I'm sorry. What aren't you going to go along with? I missed it.
That anyone can be a Jew and there's no rules and you just kind of, hey, hey, his mother was a Jew, he's a good boy, he got bar mitzvah, he's a Jew. Oh, he's worshiping Krishna, but he's still circumcised, he is Jew. Or, oh wow, he donated so much to the synagogue, he is Jew. Like, there, for every example like that, you can find a rabbi who's actually done this. And so, like, where's the consensus? Where is the definition of a Jew?
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I mean I do know Jews that want to be ex-Jews. They don't want the burden of that inheritance or the religious duties that come with it. And they want to be ex-Jews, and in fact I interviewed Gilad Atzmon, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's an Israeli Jew who wants to be an ex-Jew, and he lived in London as a jazz musician, and he got into trouble with other Jews because he so wants to reject his the idea that he has to be religious as a Jew. And and that is really the problem in Israel anyway, because like Brexit in the UK, where the political opinion is roughly divided between Remain and Leave, and America, Trump and Biden, I guess. In Israel, there are it seems to be equally divided between the Jews who want to be religious and Jews who want to be secular. So that is a bone of contention. So I've spoken to a few Israeli Jews, and they're basically saying, yeah, that the right of return, they only seem to want secular Jews. They don't want to have religious Jews coming into the country, and the police are discriminating against us. They're giving us a hard time about the masking and the targeting religious Jews deliberately because they're in charge. Secular Jews are the ones in charge.
Well, this could be, I don't know why exactly, but I went to Israel when I was 15 or so, and there was about I don't remember how, 2 dozen of us little Jewish teenagers from the suburbs in America. Anyway, at the end of the trip, we all agreed unanimously, all the Israeli teenagers, all the American Jewish teenagers, we all agreed that Israel was way better than America, and the Israeli people are way better than the American people, and the Israeli Jews are way better than the American Jews. That's something we all unanimously agreed on.
Well, because they're more religious, is that what you mean?
No, they're just real. They're like real people. Like I met really, really good Israeli people. They're not much different from the Asian people I meet here. They're grounded in reality. They're funny. They're strong. They're crazy strong. They have to deal with being surrounded by people bombing them all the time. You think you're just gonna it builds character naturally. Mm-hmm. Whereas my family and other quote reform unquote Jews in America are in this comfy position where they can just kind of lawyer their way through anything in life, and they never have to get their hands dirty ever. And that natural situation breeds a lack of character, which is exactly what's been happening.
Mm-hmm. So I think people who are grounded in principle are easier to deal with. Particularly when they've declared their principles, so you can kind of get them when they've broken their principle, I think. And but people who never declare their principles, they're very hard to deal with because they're so slippery, and they'll say, well, I never said that, and they'll lie, and they'll use fake arguments and not declare their principles. And I think in the most practical way, this is a problem. People aren't expected to have principles, therefore they don't follow them, and then they don't even know what a principle is. We had this very interesting, unexpectedly interesting discussion when we both agreed that principles are for dying for.
Yes.
and of course, you can imagine all the, atheists and Westerners saying, "Oh, well, we don't want to die," and our answer would be, "Well, we're all going to die." So, not having principles is not going to stop you from dying.
Absolutely true. This is what really disturbs me the most about when I see my religious Krishna devotee friends wearing their masks, and they're also scared about the coronavirus. It's like, what? You're a complete farce. Your whole existence is a joke. Like, we are told exactly how to deal with this situation in the Vedas, and it's not a big deal. If we're gonna die, we're gonna die.
Yeah, right. And this is the religious view, which is why the Jews in Israel, they don't care. It's like, well, we want to go to synagogue. We'll observe the social distance. Let us go to worship together, and because it's. I guess they feel this emotional, spiritual need to worship, and they basically say, we don't care if we die because we think we're going to go to a better place if we've been good people. And the reason
that's principles.
Yeah, and you can see why China did what it did, because it's saying, we care about you, we want you to be good workers, and and I guess if you're atheist, and we already know that most Chinese citizens are atheists because that's how they were brought up and educated, so they would believe that there's only one life, and of course the West is mainly atheists, and I'm afraid I think that our government is trying to pander to the atheists who are afraid to die. Because really, scientific opinion is divided. There are scientists who actually say, go for herd immunity. It's not going to stop everything, and of course, logically, there's no certainty that this will stop, or that it won't get worse and more virulent, and does this mean that we just lock ourselves down forever? Of course not. We're going to die of starvation if we don't harvest crops and, do the things that we need to produce the things that we actually need to live as human beings. So really, I really wish, that they would call it the war against a virus and the war against terrorism, which is a stupid metaphor. But at least, in war, you expect casualties. So we'll just accept that we're going to die and we're going to live normally and we're going to do the thing we used to do. And maybe we'll just have to, die like flies. But I think there'll be enough people to, carry on our different civilizations. And that is really, I think atheists, well, scientists would agree, even with the religious, we can't stay, we already know we can't stay locked down forever. We don't just sort of, open the door slowly and then quickly shut it again, because businesses can't operate like that. People go to Spain. Oh, the more people die. So all these people who paid for their holidays, British people who went to Spain, and then they were told it's okay, which means that when they come back, they don't have to be put in a 2-week quarantine. And then you hear this exchange of this Spanish guy in the Balearic Islands, and they were saying, well, we don't have any COVID here. In fact, here in Spain, in Minorca, and the little islands, we have less COVID than in Britain, and it's sort of, and then you kind of laugh and say, we have no COVID. Come and bring your COVID in Britain to us. He seems to be saying, because in a way it stopped making any sense a long time ago. And herd immunity is the only solution now, even for China, I'm afraid. So all the trouble they took might be for nothing in the end. I mean, maybe it just shows that, if you want to stop anybody from coming into your country, then you have to make sure that the people in your country are able to pick the fruit before they rot. Because that was what this documentary that showed how things are in Italy, Europe, France, and Spain. How these different European countries are coping, and the farmers in Spain are basically saying, we can't get these, Africans from Mauritania and, wherever, and what do we do when they get sick and while they're picking the fruit? But it's not just fruit, it's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be harvested, and this means food shortages next year or very soon.
So Claire, the COVID, and everyone else listening, COVID-19 is really a beautiful gift for a truth seeker, because it's the ultimate litmus test for everything, for who we are and where we're at. So even
it's
if
a
I were to
stress test, really.
Yeah. So if I were to just put all of my ethos and dharma stuff to the side and just use logic, with what's happening now, I don't even need to read through scientific papers. Like, the effective way out of this is so obvious, and almost no one is doing it, which shows like the state of our species. Like, it's even worse than an East and West thing. This is why I said at earlier that the dharma of the East is also dying. It's also degrading. And it's just going to take a longer time for that to happen. Meanwhile, in the material world, China and India and the other Eastern nations will be rising in material power. So they are essentially inheriting the material earth, but they're eventually going to be swarmed with the same problems that have already destroyed Western culture, namely what you could call global homo and sexual liberation, feminism, and in terms of the Vedas, we just have one word for all of this, which is sense gratification. That's all it is. If you are just living to satisfy your senses, you're an animal. And if you're living to devote or sacrifice your senses to a higher purpose, then you're a human being. And within the realm of human beings, those who sacrifice not just to a better future or a good family, as the Chinese do, but to the one true God, that is religion. And that is where you get saints and angels and demigods and all that cool stuff. I want to go back to the solution. So I hope we all see the problem well enough. But as far as giving the Westerners something so they can have a proper culture of with principle. All right, let's forget culture. Let's just call it principle, because we agree there, and I really like how we've used language there, that a principle is something that you're ready to die for. So how can we give Westerners principles? We have secular Koranism. I don't know how to say that. Koranism.
Koranism. Yeah.
Koranism.
It comes from religion. The strongest principle comes from religion. You can see from the way Jews and Muslims behave. We already know they're not supposed to eat pork. Or the Jews don't work on Saturdays and that kind of thing. We know what their principles are, so their principles are the strongest. It's Christians. What are you allowed or not allowed to do? Who knows? Anything goes. Christians. Okay, the 21st century Christian is a liberal who thinks he's going to heaven, and that's what Christianity is in the 21st century. I mean, how dare they? How dare they think they're going to go to heaven after all they've done? And that's what they think.
Here's one little thing that will surprise many listening. Heaven is a trap, according to many Vedic texts that I listen to. And heaven is actually the one thing I'm really trying to avoid. I would actually rather go to hell. I would rather really stand for my principles and commit all sorts of heinous crimes and go to hell, knowing that I will, be justly punished and have a chance to come back and try it again. I'd rather do that than heaven, where I'm just surrounded by pleasure and I forget my true purpose, which is to go back to Godhead. So the real goal is not going to heaven, which is the world of pleasure, celestial pleasure, but to go to the feet of the Lord and to serve him eternally, which is what we are all doing anyway, whether we're in hell or heaven or earth or even directly at his feet in a personal relationship with him.
Well,
We are all eternal servants, whether we like it or not.
well, I mean, nobody can say what the afterlife is going to be, but surely it's possible for reincarnation and heaven and hell to exist, in the sense that you could go to heaven and then when you get bored you can come back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's precisely what we learn from the Vedas, that the Christian heaven is actually a planet. And
Are
the
you
reason
a
people go
that's
there,
a Mormon. Don't Mormons believe that kind of thing? They all
they
have.
might also, but as I know it from studying the Vedas, and Vedic culture, maybe you could also say, because whatever Vedas I've studied, it's whatever's been passed down to me in the particular translation that's happened and so on. But people who do pious work in this earthly realm, they accumulate good karma and they get rewarded. They go to heaven, they live 1,000 years in one day, and they drink the nectar and have all the sex they want, and eventually their good karma runs up and then they come back down to the earthly realm. Likewise, those who do horrendous sins in this world go to a hellish planet. It's not a heaven and hell. We have this Judeo-Christian idea that it's like an alternate reality or something like that. In the Vedas, it's just a planet of many trillions of planets. So you go to one of the many hellish planets within the material world and you suffer for all the sins you've committed, and then you come back slowly, you come back to the earthly realm. Now, I don't know for sure, but I think that the reason I prefer hell over heaven is that when you're in hell and you finally make your way back up to the middle realm of earth, your character is built up. So it gives you, I would think, a better chance to go back to Godhead. But that's just where I'm at spiritually, at least.
I think we could just focus whether we believe in the afterlife or not in learning from our mistakes, and a lot of people will just reject truth, logic and morality if they don't like the sound of it, and then they won't argue about it, they won't engage with you on it because they're afraid of losing the argument. And you can expect, I don't know, silly women whose feelings are easily hurt to behave in this way, but I'm afraid a lot of politicians are doing this.
Let's get back to it, okay? How are you going to give principles to the thin-skinned white Westerners that they're willing to die for with secular Koranism?
Well, you have to give them a new religion, because Christianity has obviously failed, and of course I propose secular Koranism, because I'm not saying, oh, you've got to believe in God, because they'll go crazy. So I'm saying this is a better system because that would restore the patriarchy. You won't be forced into believing in God or whatever. You just obey the rules. You observe the minimum of these rules, which are the ones on sexual morality and not having illegitimate offspring, and make sure you parent them properly, and there will be within the system the proper incentives for you to be married parents, to bring them up properly, and and the economic conditions that will allow men to be able to support a family, and even to, for the wife, if you want to work at home, to do whatever, but by removing all the red tape that makes it so hard for people who want to start their own business.
So it seems to me that secular Koranism is just Islam, but without God. Right?
It makes belief in God optional. It guarantees your freedom of belief, and I believe that it is chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran that the First Amendment is based on. There is a White House Quran. Thomas Jefferson, it's his copy, in fact, and he did read it in order to negotiate some treaty with the Barbary pirates who were being a bit of a pain to the Americans at the time. So he did read the book. He did train as a lawyer, so I imagine, quite sensibly, he thought, well, if I'm going to negotiate with these people who are Muslims, I should read their book to better negotiate with them.
Yes, of course. That's the decent thing to do. That's not even particularly intelligent.
Mm.
I will admit, so one thing I like about Ethos, and that's really important to me, is that it's so short. It's 400 verses. So regardless of, once again, East or West, for the average modern person who has the attention span of like of a mouse, I don't know. You have to either give them something so short and small and easy to comprehend, or you have to be violent enough with them that they'll stay in their place. So, in the East we have that kind of violence that's keeping the sense of justice in the air. And in the West, I mean, we've got nothing. Like the secular laws, like the Bill of Rights, you can read in a few minutes online, but that's a tiny aspect of the federal code, which actually determines what you're going to do in a court of law to defend yourself. And because it's so complicated, you have this whole lawyer system set up, which I think should be totally scrapped. I think for any functioning system of law, you need laws that people actually understand at like a high school level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the 12 tables of Rome that the plebs made the patricians carve on in the forum, so they knew what their rights were. So it needs to be easy to remember and clear and accessible to everyone. And I'm saying the Quran because it's free. You can get it online, but I would be really interested to. I hope you feel able to read out a few of the verses in your book to give us a flavor of it.
Sure. I have it opened up here. So,
Great.
In general, I will first say that, well, because Ethos is so general, there's many different ways you can use it. So what I am personally interested in doing now is whether or not I can start waging war, actually, based on Ethos. Like, do I have the right to just punch someone in the face when they say wear a mask and I don't want to wear a mask? So in terms of either disciplining them or just straight up waging war on people who would enforce evil on me, am I able to justify that with Ethos or with the Bhagavad Gita? That's what I'm working on now personally. So here's chapter 1 verse 4. Quote, as with studying action of any kind, there is an exactness we cannot achieve because of the nature of the subject matter, unquote. So even if you are making a legislation system based off Ethos, which is kind of like what the founding fathers were doing, you have to always remember, it's kind of like martial arts where you always go back to the basics. Like, it sounds really fun and easy to say murder is bad, but actually, no, sometimes you're allowed to kill. There's self-defense and there's other reasons. Mm-hmm. And the circumstances actually determine what is ethical and what is unethical. So, this is the fourth verse in the text for a reason, because even though we will get it to greater degrees of detail and application later on, like, you really want to come back to chapter 1 like a lot because it's the foundation.
Uh-huh.
Here's another one. Verse 7 in chapter 1. The primary function of the human being is activity of the soul in accord with and requiring reason, unquote. This verse is beautiful because this is how I would actually justify war and even genocide if I had to. I think this might have been what, like, Hitler did. If you have people who are not using reason, they're not people. And if they're not people, they're subhuman, they're animal, and you can just treat them like animals, which is, and if I combine that with my spiritual knowledge, I know, it still doesn't mean I can just go around killing people. Like, I kill mosquitoes, but that's it. Like, I like animals. I think they're cute and they're friendly and they don't bother me. But if they do start to bother me and and they get in the way of my livelihood, which many subhumans today are doing, And I think this is what happened to Hitler. He was surrounded. He was a really super high IQ, kind of high ethos man surrounded by subhumans who was destroying his nation. And he said, "Look, we just gotta, burn off the dead weeds here." And that's why I did not finish reading Mein Kampf, because I was scared I would like with it and agree with it too much. Don't tell anyone that.
Yeah, I've read it. I mean, I think more people should read it because it says something very relevant about not Jews. I mean, it's just like, actually, he was quite boring about Jews. He was just saying, if they all died of being gassed, I don't care. I wouldn't care. It's like, well, nobody's going to force you to care, Mr. Hitler. But what he said about democracy. So.
Yes, I have definitely an agreement with you on many ways. That's why I laugh a lot. Yes, as you were saying?
So he was saying that democracy was a terrible thing, and when he was in Austria, he would go and observe the parliamentary proceedings in Austria, I think it was, because there's a chapter in it, and I actually did read a chapter out of it on one of my streams called The Operation of Democracy. And he was saying that, the Germans would be the dominant race, but in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the only way to make democracy work would be to, sell rights to bribe minorities to support them. And that was how the rights of the dominant group, in that case Germans, were being eroded just by operating as a democracy. And he said that, last century, and it's still true. And that is the problem, which nobody will discuss because it's from my camp, and and nobody will listen anyway, because the political classes, I don't think they even listen to each other, but they won't listen to me when I point out that democracy doesn't work for these reasons, because and I give it to them, and they'll see it's true, and they don't want to talk about it because they know they're going to be shouted and screeched at if they say publicly in clear, direct words that democracy is not working, and they know it isn't working.
So in the sequel to Ethics, the Politics from Aristotle, he says, I actually never got to finish that one. It just bores me too much. I honestly really don't like politics, but the individual politics, the politics of the soul, I care deeply about. But anyway, Aristotle basically says, much like in the individual realm, the societal realm, there's a golden mean between tyranny and oligarchy on, we'll say, the far right, and direct, pure democracy on the far left. Both of these are extremes. They're guaranteed not to work. So the ideal system is somewhere in the middle, and there's a chance that, depending on the circumstance, it's wiser, actually more prudent, to veer more towards one side than another. So I would think, and this is what I experienced firsthand in Thailand, which is a constitutional monarchy, I think it's better to be a bit closer to tyranny, oligarchy, dictatorship, etc. Not all the way there, but if you just err more towards that direction, I think that's better, because the masses are largely sense-based. They're not using rationality as much. And I want to read just one more verse from chapter 10, verse 2 of Ethos. Quote, "Arguments are enough to inspire confidence in action among those who are born of good character, but they seem unable to turn the many toward being fine and good, for the many naturally obey fear, not shame. They avoid what is base because of the penalties, not because it is disgraceful," unquote. So this is something, these kind of verses you can actually use alongside Islam or Christianity or any other kind of culture or religion to justify harsh punishments for adultery, for example, because the kind of person who commits adultery, like, that's how they learn. That's how they will get better, is by knowing for sure, in a very grounded physical sense, that they have really messed up, not only for themselves and their own family, but something like adultery really spreads outward to affect the rest of society, and we need harsh punishments for this. Like, I don't see any other way to have a decent society.
Yeah, and we can't even talk about that. And America still has laws that says adultery is a criminal offense. There are some states that still say that, but they're not allowed to enforce it. But this is the thing about feminism. Feminists have declared the intention of destroying the patriarchy, and patriarchy is built on the foundation of marriage. So you will have noticed that everything that feminists propose would undermine marriage and family values. But but what feminism does, and what feminism does, is bribe men with extramarital sex, and men can't refuse. That is their weakness, and in this way they are weaker than women.
Yes, the gender differences are always interesting to study and look at. But yeah, so if I look at America, especially since I have a lot of experience there, what's the most crippling, especially personally, why I don't want to even go back there as a tourist. One, the family is dead. There's no such thing as family in white America anymore. If you're a first-generation immigrant from Mexico or an Islamic country or Africa, or like most other countries, if you're living in a small little town and you're barely even speaking English, like, those people still have their families. But a white multi-generational family like mine, there's no family. There's no hierarchy. There's no order. It's just like, oh yeah, I'll go have dinner with my family because they're here, and they'll be a little mad if not. But as soon as it's over, I'm going to go watch Netflix and pretend they don't exist. And I have no duty to them. They have no duty to me. So it's family, one, and then two, what bothers me the most is the men. The American white man is unbelievably weak, cowardly, thin-skinned. I got into a fight recently with one of my devotee friends who's actually older than me and more experienced in religion, and he just got so mad. He was like, I can't believe you'd say something like this to me, and I thought your character was different. I'm like, dude, like, you're acting like a child right now. Like, if I go up to your house and smack you in the face, or if I do some direct thing against you, sure, that can justify this kind of outrage. But if someone says something you don't quite like or understand on Facebook, and then you bombard them with like voice messages of, oh my God, this is an injustice against me. Like, none of my Asian friends do that. It's so childish to them. Like, they still, regardless of what, if you want logos or dharma, whatever the hell it is, like, the idea of a man being a man, a woman being a woman, a child being a child, that's still very much alive in China, Japan, India, and elsewhere. And that's why I've been staying here.
Well, it's important for us to all know our place. And that is, it's all about the efficiency of a society, because earlier I was talking about, the military, and what they do is obviously a matter of life and death and the survival of your country. And so, they want the orders to be clear, and for there to be, a hierarchy where there is a chain of command. And so there's no argument about whether a person has to follow an order or not, and of course all this is gone now, and I think these ideas of egalitarianism came from the French Revolution, which of course had the slogan of liberty, equality, and fraternity, but there is not much fraternity if you don't have this idea of who is your younger brother and who is your older brother, which is actually something that Confucius talked about. a man's relationship with his older brother and younger brother. That's kind of what it's all about. But maybe the Chinese will lose it because they're mostly single child, families.
I'm fascinated by Chinese everything, and I actually cried a couple times just before leaving China because I've never done that anywhere else. Not that I remember. Maybe like when I was really high in college and I left like a really good music festival, I might have shed a few tears. But yeah, I just have a crazy connection to these people. So even though I'm in Hong Kong, which is quite a bit different, I'm still here. I'm still in it, which is nice. Although they're handling COVID just like horrible little shit monkeys. But
do you think they would be handling it differently in China, where you really wish to be? It seems.
I wish to be in the real China, just like I wish to be in the real America. If so, I grew up in a small town, zip code 01776, very historical town, Boston area, and I went to school and they taught me of the Boston Tea Party and the Revolution and like these great men, intelligent men putting their life on the line with muskets. And I'm still fired up to this day with this American Revolution. Literally to this day, I am still so fired up to do that just next to them in the 1700s, early 1800s. But at some point after that, it just died and they're all weak little sissy dingleberries. But China, to me, China in one word is family. It's not it, and the way they do family, it's a very dharmic way of doing family. But family is the secret to the success and failure of China for 5,000 or more years. So when China falls, I think it will be when the government imposes too many restrictions on the family and the people revolt. I think that's when they will fall, which might not actually happen. It's maybe China will just continue as it always has, but their regime will have to change. Like, it's not sustainable. This little CCP party they're doing, like they'll either have to adapt, and eventually they'll have to either conquer the whole world or change. They have to change their name. Like, you can't have communists in the name of your leading party with the kind of history that we've seen. Like, how can that just go on forever? Like, right? They'd have to either conquer the whole world and make everyone communist, or say, oops, yeah, we're still in power, but we're going to call ourselves the People of Equality Party, which is the same thing, right? But
what are you saying is unsustainable that China is doing? I didn't quite get that.
Well, what they're doing, it's tyranny. In one word, it's just tyranny. So when I first came to China in 2015, there was very little tyranny. For me, the only thing I remember is I had to wait an hour at the bank to do something really simple instead of maybe 20 minutes. Like, that's it.
Okay.
Everything else was peachy keen.
And what is this tyranny you speak of?
So now, there's cameras everywhere, the social credit score. It's all a great idea in theory to have, a strong sort of socialized government, whatever you want to call it, that, will reward people for good behavior and punish people for bad behavior. That is excellent. That's actually like classic ethos, you might say. But the way they're doing it is totally arbitrary. It's just whoever submits to us, whoever gives us more money we like, everyone else, whatever. We'll just make up a reason to throw you in jail. Oh, he was jaywalking at the wrong time. Take off 200 points from his credit score. Now he can't travel anywhere. He can't hold a job. Yeah, our problem's done with. This is just human nature. This kind of tyranny is never sustainable.
Oh, I've read that the West might even copy China's social credit system.
That is one of the main. That is probably the primary purpose of COVID-19 for the globalists. They're saying, wow, we love this little scam China's got going. What if we could do this in the West? Oh, shit. Like, I can totally imagine these, Illuminati type people in their meetings like, yo, I got a great, they did that SARS thing. Yo, let's do that again. And yeah, and it's genius.
But China is ahead of the West in the installation of 5G, and presumably that's what upset America so much, because America. I mean, who's installing 5G in America? I don't even know. And
Huawei.
Have been kicked out.
Right.
TikTok have been kicked out. So I think Trump is basically kicking Chinese businesses out. But then they'll come to Europe, and I guess the Americans will bully the Europeans into kicking out Chinese companies, and maybe they'll say no, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to follow your orders.
Claire, this is already happening. I've literally already seen headlines of this, of Germany and other European countries saying, no, we're going to ban Huawei, we're going to ban TikTok, and this is karma. This is what happens. So, this is what China was doing with the Great Firewall, blocking Google and Facebook and YouTube. They're not scared that, the mainlanders are just going to turn on Facebook and then they're just going to, eat hamburgers and overthrow the government. They want market share. So when you have 1.6 billion people all using WeChat and Tencent Chinese companies, and those companies are on the New York Stock Exchange, bam, you just made $100 billion. Like, it's a great idea. And now that the circumstances have happened so that the West is saying, oh, we can just do the same thing. And I think this is really good. Now the whole world is on the same page of like how economic war is waged, and we have a bunch of different nation states fighting with each other, which I actually really like to see, because I like that more than this like globalist new world order stuff, which is a bit more scary to me, I think.
But is what you're saying part of this New World Order thing? I mean, I guess the global order, the assumption is that America administers the global order, unofficially, and now, it sees China, taking its market share, and it don't like it, and that I guess is what it's all about. So they're going to kick China out of America.
I think I agree with Donald Robertson here with that Illuminati basically means Jews, and Jews basically mean Zionists, and basically the Zionists have taken over America, and that's why they don't mind at all seeing this polarized, the people just killing each other, because to them, like, they're all their enemies, so they'd love to see this thing crushing down. Anyway, I don't know where else to go here.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to choose some kind of moral system. We were talking about communism and the other secular political ideologies. They are also moral systems. I mean, to be fair to liberals, conservatives, socialists, communists, or even Nazis and fascists, they thought that their idea would be better for their country. And it didn't work out, I guess. But that's the whole idea of these, ideologies. They get conceived of, they get pushed forward, and they either succeed or they die. And I think liberalism and conservatism have come to the end of the line, because secular political ideologies have the habit of not outlasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so I want to be clear with the terminology here. Ideology, yes, these things come and go, and these things are the problem. But a real ethical system that you can only find in a bona fide religion or an ethos. I literally haven't seen it anywhere else. So the reason why these ideologies are not actually ethical systems, that's why they don't work. They claim to be, but they in fact are not. They are not based in either God or logic. So Aristotle's system does talk about the soul, and it does talk about the gods in just one or two verses, but it's really just based off nature. It's a natural ethics. And in that sense, it's universal, and you can, like I said earlier, you can actually take it and apply it in your own culture, in your own religion, however is best for you. So, for example, in China, where the men, even when they're being good men, they're not brave. They're typically meek and sheepish and humble. That's it. They just place more of an emphasis on humility, the virtue of humility, and less on bravery. Whereas in the West, we have Alexander the Great and Steve Jobs and these great, masculine heroes that are known for their bravery. Like, that's more important in the West. So you can just, fine tune it a little bit. But like communism, liberalism, conservatism, like these mean nothing. These are as temporary as the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is something to be said about a left or, but it's not a good enough word, left or right. But there are some attitudes or dispositions we have that can lean us in certain ways, like going more independent and individualistic versus more dependent collectivist. Like, those things are natural. They're based on our psychology. So, if you that's, and then ethics uses that natural parts of us and anchors it into either reason or God or both. That's the only way it can be ethical. If it's just for money and power and like, oh, this feels good with our culture, that's ideology, and that will never work.
Would you like to explain your definition of ethos? I mean, it's not quite the same thing as morality, is it? An ethical or a moral person? I mean, what would be the difference?
So first, the dictionary definition. Ethos is a Greek word. I think it's ancient Greek and modern Greek also. I'm not sure. But it just means character or quality. So you can talk about the ethos of a painting just as much as the ethos of a person or of a culture or of a religion. And then you can zoom in on it too. Now, ethics in English comes from the Greek ethikos, and ethikos comes from ethos. So an ethical person is someone with good ethos, or at least someone who is on the dimension of valuing the quality of things, meaning you have to.
You keep fading in and out, the audio, your audio, you fade in and out, just to let you know.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear you, but you do fade in and out.
Okay. Well, I can put my mic closer. I don't know what else to do.
Okay.
So ethos, as I use it, can mean a bunch of different things. That's why it's confusing. But yes, it is a shorthand word for ethics, for just being ethical. But it's also the real power of it is in a secular and like aesthetic sense. For example, Michael Jordan has great ethos. It's different than saying Michael Jordan is ethical, which sounds kind of boring and like what, so like he does good deeds or something. Like it doesn't really make sense. But if you say Bruce Lee, Michael Jordan, Steve Jobs, whatever, have great ethos, and it gets it gets to the heart of why we are being ethical. And if you just focus on the heart instead of the external thing of like, oh, don't do murder, give money to charity, like that kind of dry law-based part of ethics, I think that's why ethics has never caught on to humanity, because it's just boring and dry. But if
Professional
you
ethics,
go,
I think, this is okay. My understanding of a moral person and an ethical person is that the ethical person is somewhat above the merely moral person, and it tends to apply to people in a position of trust, such as, professional people, because they talk about professional ethics, lawyers, accountants, doctors, people that are in a position of trust. I mean, ethical politicians. Wow, if we could have that, that would be great.
yeah, and so an ethical politician, that idea sounds so good to us, because that would mean that this politician is placing virtue and or reason as higher in value and importance than money, status, and power, which are, and those things are bad because they are base, and base meaning bestial. They appeal to our lower natures, which it's just part of nature. Like it's not bad that I see someone I like and I say, hey, they'd be nice in bed with me, but we have to temper those inclinations. Hence the virtue of temperance. So ethos is also, it's a mode of being, in the same way that religion and God and spirituality is a mode of being. So when your primary way of perceiving reality and acting in reality is spiritual, and someone comes along and says, oh, there's an invisible boogeyman, COVID-19, and you gotta wear a mask and you gotta sanitize every day, they just go, what? Like, no. I mean, I'll wash my hands a little bit more than usual, but that's it. Like, I have God, I have eternity, I have bliss, I have full knowledge, and you can't scare me with this crap.
Well,
If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die.
You don't even have to believe in God. It's like, just to know a little bit about European history, we know that Europe suffered the Black Death in the Middle Ages, right? Well, it didn't kill them all. They still went on and colonized America and took over the world. So it's just a blip, right? There's no need to destroy ourselves over it. Some people are going to die. You'll just have to let them die. But because you're this stupid politician who wants to pretend that you care about everyone, you're saying, oh, look how much we care about you. We're making you wear masks. This shows us how much you care. Old, dying, no longer economically productive people, because we know you vote. That's why the political classes are pulling out all the stops to pretend that they care. It's the young people who say, we don't care, we'll take our chances. We want to party, or work, or whatever. It's these people who should have their preference prioritised. It's like, oh, people, you've had your innings, you've been around. You're not going to, make young people... You're not going to destroy the economy over yourselves. So... and I don't know. I mean, you have to prioritise, don't you? If a whole bunch of people are going to die, you kind of, well, who are they, why, whatever, and who you should protect. If you can't save everyone, it's pretty obvious, in my view. You don't destroy the economy over people who are going to die anyway, and we're all going to die. And the only reason why the politicians are doing it is to show that they care. Because they think that we're going to vote for them more if they show how much they spent on us. When really, most people would rather go back to work or whatever.
So another critical aspect of our disposition is, are we living in present limited temporary time or eternal time. So the spiritual path, regardless of how you do it, is grounded in a sense of eternity. Like, it's not something that you just pick up. It's not like a cool movie that you watch and you forget a few years later. It's always there. So ethics, to me, I think the reason why I'm excited about this and I think it can work is ethics is also eternal. But yes, it'll change. Like, as I said, the ethics in one culture will be different than another culture, and this will change a little bit over time. But the idea that a human being is rational and that the most excellent human being is the one who is most excellent with rationality, which is how Aristotle defines that's the basis of ethics. Is that's what I'm talking about with excellence.
I'm so glad you mentioned the subject, because really, we were talking about ethics in the context of COVID, and I was saying the reason why we have all these cowardly politicians all over the world, and even China, is to show how much they care, and to gratify themselves. But really, when they think about it, if you want to govern your country in the long term, not only do you have to consider all the people in the country at the time who have a legal right to be there, of course, you have to consider future generations, which means people you will never meet. You're talking about descendants. And basically, you're ethical if you do care what they think of you. Not you might not like it if okay, I'm saying I won't like it if anybody thinking, looking back on our times in our history will say these stupid people destroyed themselves over a virus that that didn't have that high a mortality rate because they were all atheists and stupid, and their governments went along with it, to show how much they cared about the people. But in that process, they destroyed themselves. So we have to think even beyond the country as it is with all the people in it now, because it will just look stupid, right? I just think we're like Aztecs now, killing people unnecessarily just to, make a point that people think is stupid. Like, well, the Aztecs conducted human sacrifices because they seemed to think that the sun was not going to rise if they didn't do it. And I mean, who knows why they kept doing it? Maybe they just felt bad. They just felt more comforted if they had more people, whose lives they sacrificed in order to appease their god. But I'm saying there's no need, because people don't even want to, be kept in lockdown, as you can see from all the demonstrations against the restrictions of lockdown, bubbling up all over the West.
Yes. I was just looking up what I love about this scam is you literally just go to Google, you look up COVID deaths, and you take out a calculator, you divide the numbers, and you see it's a scam. Like, instantly. That's all you need to do.
You divide it by what? You divide it by the total population.
The deaths. Well, that's even worse. That makes it even more silly. Like, the total deaths is 691,000 right now in the world of 7.7 billion. So if
it's pathetic, isn't it?
It's beyond pathetic. Look, but even if you take the total confirmed cases and the total deaths out of that, it's 3.8%. That's a 96% survival rate, right?
Huh. Yeah.
Like, and so. Yes, it's like, even if I give you that this is a real virus and I just give you all of that, that's true. It's still 96% survival rate, and it does not justify the lockdowns and all the social political measures. Yes, so the ethical way of looking at this is, where is the golden mean? Where are the two extremes, and where's the golden mean? So we are way past the golden mean towards one extreme. The other extreme is, of course, doing absolutely nothing about it, which, that's an extreme. But actually, if we did that, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. But we definitely want to go closer to that side of the spectrum when you're looking at a 96% survival rate.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
this is like a basic, like you pick up Aristotle's Ethics, you read it for a day or two, and you come to this conclusion very easily.
well, yeah. I mean, you kind of take it to the next level because I mean, I was thinking, what a politician now would say to my argument about me saying, it's not just your potential voters that you're trying to, show off to with all these extraordinary measures. What about the next generation? And it'll say, well, there'll always be a next generation, but the next level is that you want them to think well of you, that you don't want to think that you're stupid, do you?
Yeah.
I mean that is really the clincher, and one assumes that they will, if all goes well, have more knowledge than you do, or will they be even more degenerate and stupid?
So that's I'm gonna again bring back ethos. Ethos is character. So when your character is developed enough where you have a strong sense of honor, at the nth degree, to the really developed saintly sage-like person, they would rather die than be disrespected just once by a slight word, by nothing. So it just shows us that politicians and other leaders now, they really don't have any honor. So, and
they
that's
don't care
why they're
about
doing
abstract ideas. They care about things that are quantifiable, like votes, like wealth, and status. But they don't care about what posterity would think of them and their way of governing, and how totally corrupt they are, and how nothing is fit for purpose, that the courts don't dispense justice, that media outlets don't tell us the news, they keep us ignorant. It is that that nothing is fit for purpose. Think nobody does what they're supposed to do, and of course such a society will collapse eventually. Because the least you can do as a group is to keep yourself in existence, and they don't really care. They're saying gay marriage is okay. Nobody wants to become a married parent anyway. It doesn't matter. We'll just keep producing people or importing them, and who cares? As long as we win the next election. Without saying, well, maybe this whole election malarkey was just stupid to begin with, and you can't actually make an argument for that. It didn't last very long in Athens. Democracy didn't last very long in Athens. It didn't last long in Rome. Because if you look at the totality of Roman history, you will know that imperial Rome existed a lot longer than republican Rome.
Yeah, as I said earlier, democracy in its pure state is an extremist position. It's unnatural.
It would only work. It would only work if most voters were wise, and we know they're not. We know they're really stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at the chat here. I mean, 4% death rate is sky high. Really, really.
Who said that?
Donald Robertson.
Yeah.
So
He's
I wanted to
atheist.
look up. Oh, yeah, you can just tell by how they make their words. It's really quick to tell, actually.
Yeah.
But like, what's the normal seasonal flu death rate? It's probably similar. Maybe. Oh, sorry, it's not 4%. It's 3% or 2.8%. Whoa, big difference. Oh my God, lock down everything. Like. Okay, so another thing I wanted to say is, because culture is crazy important. So for the masses who are not really ethical, they're not on that dimension of reality, and they're not really spiritual either, what they're left with is ideology and culture. But culture is good. Like, culture is not something that I will just throw away because, oh, it's material, it's temporary, which is true. Even like Chinese culture or Indian culture, these are the oldest cultures in the world, but are they going to be here as they are today 10 million years from now? No, it's temporary. It's going to change and die off. But a good culture is like the fuel that can, no, not fuel, but you cannot be ethical and spiritual in a horrible culture. That's why I'm so happy to leave America, because the culture is just garbage. So we need a way to bring something like ethos or something like secular Koranism into the culture, because you know as I do, if you just say, oh, God tells you to do it, so you have to do it, they're atheists, they don't care. Or, oh, Aristotle says it's ethical, so you have to do it, I don't care. But if you can bring it into the culture somehow, make it cool, like that's how you can bring something in. So with ethos, I just point to Michael Jordan, Bruce Lee, Steve Jobs, like people who are just excellent, just as people. Basketball players, like it doesn't matter what it is. You can take any excellent person, line them up to the text and say, oh, in this example, and you can do it with movies too and stories. In this example, that would be too extreme. The other end would be too extreme. They chose this golden mean path in the middle time and time again. And look what happened. They got rewarded, excellent, famous, and all that stuff. So let's just be more like them. That's basically ethos.
I'm so glad you mentioned culture, because I think culture is fluid, isn't it? You know, it just changes with time. And I think culture is kind of like liquid, and the laws. I think culture is a product of law and morality. Okay, law and practice, really. So people will do whatever the law allows, and that practice becomes culture. And it can be good or bad, obviously, but obviously good laws will produce a good culture, and bad laws will produce a bad culture.
One exception being the Eastern world. Like, this is one of the fundamental differences. In China, there is no law. That's actually, it doesn't exist there. They have guanxi.
What does that mean for the benefit of...
Right. Guanxi is, it means connections, like social connections. So you can say, I have guanxi with this guy. He got me a job, you know, or I brought to court, but I got off. I have good guanxi.
A relationship of obligation. Is that what you mean? Is that what it means?
That's part of it. Yeah, obligation and whatever else you want to do for fun. It's just your relationships. But the point is, you will be punished or rewarded according to the guanxi, not according to a text on a piece of paper, which is a law. That's what a law is. Unless you're referring to the social norms that are part of the culture, and that's why I value culture a lot, because like the reason why laws do have an effect in the West is because it's the culture of America to just obey the law. Whereas in Thailand, as I said before, you know, you go with, hey, you know, I'm polite to the guy, give him a few bucks and I'm fine. But according to the law, I'm a criminal. Like, I was a criminal on a daily basis in Thailand, but I was considered a, you know, one of the at least one of the foreigners that wasn't a complete scumbag. But this is one of the aspects of logos, and the Western world is law. Like, that idea of law, not just as a social norm culture aspect, but as an overarching rational expression, verbal expression that we submit to. That is actually fundamentally Western and fundamentally not Eastern, which is why even in the Eastern wisdom texts, the Vedas, the Sutras, like the Buddhist, Hinduist, all that stuff, there's no laws, there's no commandments. Like it is there. If you look, you can find some, you know, law-based texts, but they really don't follow it. It's like it's all about the practice, meditating, mantras, vegetarianism, like whatever the practice is, that's what they focus on, and then they have their relationships, their guanxi, and that's it. Like,
it's quite. I mean, the expression "you scratch my back and I scratch yours" is a Western expression, and it sounds like this thing you're talking about. Right?
Yeah, that's guanxi. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. That's a very Chinese way of doing things.
and which Westerners instantly understand. It's like, well, you do me a favor and I'll do you one. I'll do you
Yeah, yeah,
one in
it's
return.
very simple. It's very simple. I'm not saying
That's
this
what
is
friendships
complicated
are.
at all.
This is what friendships come from, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of about it. Reciprocated goodwill. That's how Aristotle talks about it. Um, but friendship is more than reciprocated goodwill. Ideal friendship is not just reciprocating. It's I want what's best for you for your sake, and you want what's best for me for my sake. That is complete friendship in virtue, right? Which is extremely rare. Like I have, speaking of myself as someone who's been studying and practicing this for more than 10 years, that kind of friendship I have like one or two of right now, like maybe. Like it's extremely rare because for that to work, you also have to be at an equal level of virtue, of character. You have to have a similar level of ethos, otherwise it won't work really. Ideal friendship is Greek boy love. Hey, that's it's funny, but it's not true.
But that's the thing, you know. We want the rules to be clear. We want. I think you know all Trump. Yeah, I think all relationships are transactional, even amongst even between people who don't think that they're being that their relationship is transactional. So a mother loves a child. I mean, she thinks unconditionally, but obviously loving that child gives her happiness, and she would rather love the child than not love the child, because it would be horrible to love the thing that you have to look after.
Yes,
You know.
Claire, you just nailed the nail on the head. Sorry, I messed up that saying, but that is why family is crippled in the West. Everything has become transactional. So that is a friendship based on utility, which is the most degraded friendship one can have with another human being. Now, there's only one other kind of friendship, which is based on pleasure. And even a friendship based off pleasure, it's not going to last, because as soon as you get bored with the other person, you leave. But, you know, a family, brother and sister, this ideally, and not even ideally, but naturally, those family relationships are relationships of virtue, of character. So when that degrades it degrades one level to pleasure, and you only, you know, you maintain decency with each other, but you'll only hang out if it's fun to hang out. That's kind of acceptable. And it degrades one more level down to just pure utility, then you're no longer a family. It's literally, that's where the line is, I think, where you go from a family, which is not so good, that's a pleasure-based friendships, to relationships based purely on utility. That's how we treat strangers, right? Strangers on the bus, you know, you're polite with them just enough so that things can go on, and then you forget about them. Those utility-based friendships are totally natural and fine for strangers and coworkers and other people like that. But when you treat your family like that, you just destroyed your family. I think that's actually where the line is.
Well, I think we need different. Okay, we will all have family, and we will all have associates, friends, strangers, and whatever. And I think what Confucianism is about, the correct kind of attitude to take towards different groups of people and different individuals in our lives. And you're talking about family, and the only acceptable way to form a family is with your spouse, so that your offspring are legitimate. And therefore the marriage contract, and I'm saying there should be a marriage contract, and there will be people say, oh no, it's so transactional, we don't want it. But I think it needs to be transactional. I'm sorry, but it does.
Well, yes, I agree, but I think we're just confusing terms a bit here. So transactional in the sense that it's reciprocal, yes, of course. But so quick note on marriage. Like, I'm talking about ethics and culture and religion here. But as a citizen, of America, especially, like, I'm actually very libertarian, and I honestly don't mind if gay people get married or if you marry a chicken. Like, I really don't care. But the solution here is saying that there's two kinds of marriage. There's the genuine bona fide marriage between a man and a woman to make babies and give back to society, and then this other kind of relationship which we call civil union, like it, or whatever word you want to use it, as long as you know that these are two separate things, legally, ethically, culturally, spiritually, as long as you know that those are two separate things, that's fine. Gays and straights and whatever, they can do whatever the hell they want. I don't care.
Right. But as far as marriage is concerned, I mean, would you be in favour of abolishing no-fault divorce?
Yes, I think that is actually one of the few things where I might not be libertarian. Like, yeah, totally. Because, like, even, like, let's say divorce is illegal, or you just can't do it, or even there's a penalty to start doing it. If you married someone and for whatever reason you just can't live with them anymore, then just don't. Just go somewhere else. Like, but see, the thing is, when you allow legal divorce, and that's like when it becomes a public thing, like, that's going to cripple society, which is exactly what's happened. So, for example, my grandparents, who I deeply respect, and the greatest generation, of course, they were together, and from what I hear, they were good together. The kids grow up, and then they separated, and they always loved each other. But my grandpa had his paintings, his art stuff, and my grandma had her social work stuff to do in the city, and they just said, yeah, like, we did our job as parents, and we want to keep doing our work, and that's it. And, like, if that was happening today in the modern world, they say, oh, well, we have to divorce soon, let's make it official or something. Like, this is nonsense. You just don't need to do that.
What? So they live apart. Your grandparents now live apart from each other, but without divorcing.
They passed away a while ago, but yeah, they would just live apart, and they were still happily married, But
were they living apart in the same home? That's really
no. My grandma's in New York City, and my grandpa was in, like, rural upstate Maine. So yeah, they were quite a ways apart, but yeah, still married, still together, still part of the family. They're just not physically present next to each other, which, again, according to Aristotle, is totally fine, because the way we determine closeness in relationships is not physical proximity. It's more about conversation, how much you're talking to each other, mutual understanding, and also how deep the friendship already is. So if you've been married for 20 years and you've raised children together, you don't even need to talk to your spouse for like a year, 2 years. You don't even need to send a letter. Like, it's just understood that, like, you're good,
Yeah. And of course, the whole purpose of getting married is to have children, and people should admit that. And if you're going to have children, you might as well parent them properly. And we know that they're not being parented properly because of the rising crime rate, which they keep changing the rules about measuring to hide the failure of law.
Wait, changing the rules of measuring what?
The crime rate. They do change it, don't they?
Oh, I actually haven't looked into that. I'm assuming they do. Like, when it comes to not only America, but even China too, I assume they're just fudging numbers and just doing whatever the hell they please. That's my assumption by default.
Well, not every crime gets reported. We have to accept that. But
yes.
But let's just assume that
okay,
we can talk about reported crime, and then we have to see whether it led to a trial and whether it led to conviction, and it could still be wrong. I mean, the person convicted, was innocent, for example. But for practical purposes, we have to take these statistics into account to measure how well parents have been parenting their offspring. So if we're a rotten lot today, it might just be something wrong with our parenting or our culture. And this is something the government should be doing something about, which they're not, because, well, I don't know, that maybe they don't even think in those terms. They don't think it's their job to correct these things.
Yeah, I don't think they do think that way. The whole system is deeply corrupted. Another thing about the language here, when we hear corruption in English, we typically think of what I was talking about earlier, where you give a bribe to a cop or something. But corruption can apply to many different aspects. Like there's ethical corruption, spiritual corruption, and so on. So like in America, the level of corruption is so deep that, yeah, I mean, now that's what the whole transgender thing is about. Let's flip the most fundamental aspects of reality that we can completely on their heads. So, yeah, politicians are not politicians. Like in the ideal sense, a politician is someone who is so ethical. Their ethos is so great that not only do they have excellent families and good wealth, they have enough free time also that they say, hey, I want to help these other families become good too. That is the politician. That is someone who becomes a politician. They're so excellent in their own life that they start to serve others. They have the capacity to serve others, and they work together with other people who have achieved that level of excellence. That is really what a politician is and should be. But modern times, they're just their job. They're just people with a job, just like any other person with a job, and their job is to just basically stay in office, get votes, and the rest is history. You lie, cheat, and steal as much as you can to just keep your numbers good and stay in business. That's what they are.
Right. So we should have minimum standards, and that's what going back to the no-hide laws, we really need minimum standards. So, I'm going to say under secular Koranism, nobody will be forced to believe in anything they don't want to. And, I will adhere to that rule. But the very least that an atheist should be doing is to be truthful, to be rational, and to agree to not break the law. If they have no...
Yeah.
So that's at least you can do that. You submit to the truth, and you will exercise logic, and you will concede when it is shown that your argument is not logical. That's the very, very least. Those are my minimum standards.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is decency, according to Aristotle. So
honesty and logic will do. I mean, decency is this extra thing. I don't even, but you will probably be decent if you submit to truth, and you will exercise logic than if you tell lies and rely on nonsense to, justify your actions.
Yeah, for me, honesty is the most fundamental thing that I need to do business with anyone, and it's also like one of the highest virtues too at the same time. Honesty is absolutely essential. Now, but we still have to remember, all of this stuff, the only way it can have any effect is if it fits in line with the culture. So in America, we have the First Amendment, free speech, which is a total farce. Like, I myself have been fired in America for just saying something someone doesn't like, which goes directly against the culture of the First Amendment, but not the law, because the law just says the federal government won't mess with you if you say something wrong. But
But the law has to be fair. That's a thing.
The law has to match the culture. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but
And
I think we can all
yeah,
agree, whatever culture we're from, that we don't that there should be a law against murder, against theft, and sexual immorality. Right? We can agree on that, can't we?
sure, but it doesn't matter. It only matters how you enforce the law and the kind of people you have in your society, like all those details. That's actually what makes it good or bad.
Sure, but the very least you should do, to say you live in a civilized society, that there would be some, right to property, which means that if somebody takes your property, the government will do something about it, and a right to life. So, if people randomly murder you or your loved ones, there is some redress. And then, maybe you think there should be laws against people committing incest, adultery, sodomy. I don't know, or maybe you're just okay with incest. But anyway, you have some idea of sexual morality.
Claire, I agree with you that there needs to be some fundamental and universal law like this, but I don't think you're seeing my point where it it has to be a living law, not just something we write on paper and agree on, and the policeman reads your rights and you say, yeah, well, that makes sense. Blah, blah, blah. Like it's this is logos. This is the failure of logos. Like it's if it's just written down and you just agree with it in a verbal sense, but not in a
It
living
obviously has
sense,
to
like
be
in your heart.
enforced. It can only be living if it is enforced. That's what I mean. It can't be
But
just some little
enforced,
idea that you kind of nod to and then in practice flout. That,
right?
sort of like,
But even still, enforced is still the bare minimum.
yeah.
We what we really want is not just that we have this bare minimum law that's enforced just enough so that it's a law. We want people to be independently following the law by their own choice and desire. That's what we really
You'll have
want.
to give it time, don't you? I mean, if you change the law from what it is now to something else, there will be a period of adjustment when people, you have to allow people to get used to it, and then maybe, after several generations, that they will automatically obey it because that's how it's been for as long as they've known it. But you can't expect any new law to be immediately obeyed because there'll be people say, "Oh, I never knew that. It's changed, hasn't it? I didn't know it'd been changed." But we're just talking about the theory and principle of it. In order to change a law, you must first talk about changing the law, right?
No, you can just go in there and change it with a big enough gun, actually.
Okay, but
So
then you have the problem of legitimacy because then you'll be called a tyrant who usurped the rightful ruler to the throne, and
I don't think so though, because these rulers we have now, they 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 don't have rightful rule. They've they've kind of cheated their way in. So if someone just takes it from them by force and says, "Oh, look, here is a law based on the Quran or ethos or anything like that, and here's how we're going to follow, and I'm going to be totally transparent." If someone I don't see any problem with that. This is why I'm really scared to finish reading Mein Kampf. But if like they're cheaters,
Oh,
so
okay,
they're
I'll
like
tell you what the
if
problem.
someone who isn't a cheater who comes in and like yeah, sure, it would be ideal if he waited and until the time was right and using votes and whatever else. But if some guy just goes into I don't know, just chops everyone's heads off and say, look, they're all cheaters, but hey, congratulations, we did it. Now we have good people in charge. As for me personally, I have no problem with that.
Okay, but I'm saying that it won't happen immediately because you whatever idea, okay, you form it in your mind, and if you can do it yourself, like you live in the palace, it's a palace coup that we're talking about, and the courtiers could easily kill the king and say, oh, now we're in charge, but then they have to clear it with the people who'll be say, you killed our king, therefore you must be evil, and we're not going to do what you say. So everything has to have a kind of legitimacy, a kind of moral authority, and you need time for this to sink in for everyone. And anyway, if you want to kill the king and you're a courtier, for example, you you probably won't be able to do it yourself, and you'll need your conspirators. So you'll have to talk to them about it and how you're going to do it and whether you're going to get away with it. And it basically needs to be articulated. So if you say everything is rotten now, you have to propose the changes, and then they'll say, oh, but what you propose is heresy, it's revolution, and you'll have to say, well, you have to either agree that it is or it isn't, and say that you still want it or you don't want it anymore. And you know, to do this, you need to keep up a momentum of engagement with your opponents, but unfortunately you can't do anything if nobody will engage with you. And this is fundamentally the problem. My ideas are not getting a platform. I know that my subscribers are being taken off, or as soon as they arrive. Other people are doing better. People whose content is not so good, I would say, but they're getting more subscribers. Not that it matters, because ultimately it is who listens and what they can do with it, not how many millions of subscribers I have. If they're all deadbeats and non-character players, or NCPs,
NPCs,
non-player characters, right? But that's the thing, who do you address your grievance to? And this is all, you have to know the culture, you have to know the system, and I guess not even people within the system seem to know, or if they do, they don't want to do anything about it, because they think it's safer for them not to do anything about it. Because it's all so rotten. Maybe it's like, this enormous tower that they know that if anybody on it just sort of makes a sudden move, the whole thing will come crashing down, and they don't want that.
In terms of political, societal stuff, which I really try to avoid, it's called, anyway, the best way forward is, to me, it's not Koranism or Ethos, it's homesteading. In the West, I think that is actually the only way to win, to truly win as an individual and also as a community, and eventually the community can grow. But you just have to quit. Like, you have to quit the school system, the religious institutions too, like the media culture. You have to quit all of that. Go to a nice plot of land, do everything yourself, make your own food, make your own everything, and become independent in that sense.
You're talking about being a survivalist. I know it's very popular in America, where you have all this land to, build your log cabin in, but, for most people it's not practical to just sort of grow your own food and whatever. Lots of people live in the cities, and so we just have to change the laws, and this means changing the political system and the government, and nobody will talk about that.
Right, but the main reason that's stopping me and others like me from doing that is I have God. So, and I know He's going to take care of everything as best as He will. Like, the politics is a temporary concern, and God is eternal, and I'm in that direction. So I can only do anything in a societal or political sense if it pleases God. That's the only way I can do that. And to enter into politics means kissing ass, accepting that the system can be changed from within. I don't know. Like, it's a mess. It's a mess. Every way I think about it is a mess. So for me as an individual,
which is why
for me as hold on one sec, I'm almost here. So as an individual, all I have is either escape entirely, go to the woods, or stay in the city, stay in the system, but kind of well, this is what I'm doing now, where I just do the best work I can with YouTube and the internet and with the people around me, and I just stay detached, and whatever happens happens. But if I do more than that, there's serious risk involved, serious spiritual risk involved, which is why you very rarely see highly virtuous people in a highly vicious environment, because it just doesn't, this, they can't mechanically work like that. There's no way.
Sorry, what can't mechanically work? Like what?
Birds of a feather flock together. It's that simple. Virtuous people like to hang out with virtuous people, and vicious people like to hang out with vicious people. That's why in America, when you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, like, they're all in the same muck. So sure, you can choose one side that you like a little bit more. Like, you can choose yellow or you can choose blue, but they're both colors. So, like,
well, I support a one-party state, like China.
Why not a zero-party state? Why do we need any parties?
Well, because you need to attract the people to come to your organization. You need an organization.
Well, isn't that the government?
Well, the government needs to recruit from people, and it's how you group things, how you categorize things, how you organize things that really matter, and how you organize your ideas even. So, because China is perceived as the enemy, that the West won't follow anything it does. Which is silly, isn't it? It's like, you're fighting, your enemy has a bigger gun, you're going to say, I hate my enemy so much, I'll never do anything he does, so I'll never get a bigger gun, and then you'll end up shot. Because that's how they're thinking.
The China situation is so crucial to everything, because on the one hand, yes, they totally are the enemy, but on the other hand, they are the solution, because they know how to do family. So when if you can take the good things of China, which no one knows about and no one talks about, if you can take those good things, that's a really good thing to do, because they've mastered this over thousands of years, more than everyone else, except for small tribes in Africa and in other places. Like the Native Americans, I'm sure, had great family culture, but they've been conquered. And there's many other native tribes like this who have really beautiful, excellent cultures and religions, but they're just conquered people. But as far as a civilization that has endured the test of time, you have China and India and nothing else. And that's one of the fundamental things which I think no one sees, East or West. Like even the Chinese, when I talk to them about ancient China, they just go, oh yeah, we very old. Old China very cool. They have cool clothes. Yeah, they very cool. I like them. Like, to them it's a joke. They don't actually get what that means.
Right. I mean, I suppose they're proud of their ancient lineage in the same way that Jews would be proud of their ancient lineage, and I think they've been around, or they think that Jews think they've been around for 3,000 years or something, and the Chinese say they've been around for 6,000 years.
I think. Well, I don't know what the common belief is among Jews, but as far as the time scale, I think actually the Jews are at least 5,000 years. Well, all right.
I think it's a bit complicated. I think they think that the world was created, and they date their calendar to when they think the world was created. So maybe if we don't agree with evolution or whatever, I don't know.
That's going to be a mess. Let's not go there.
Because I was saying, Jews have been around for 6,000 years, and then somebody said, well, actually, it's only 3,000 if you date it from the time of Moses, because there were no Jews before the time of Moses. Because those people who came out of Egypt with Moses, those are the ones that became Jews, and before that they were. I don't know. It's all a bit confused. I'm not really sure.
Well, I know what you mean when you talk about the confusion, and that's why, at least until I find a better theory, I will fall back on the E. Michael Jones what's his theory, I guess, that there's the Hebrew people up until year zero, and then there's the Jewish people after like year 70, and those are two different peoples. Like, I think that's a very useful way to think about it, and it also seems historically incredibly accurate because we literally have year zero that marks the change. So, like, it makes perfect sense that way, I think.
I'm just basically saying, that there's a chronological order to the revelation of the scripture, and I maybe I'm being a bit too dry and dusty, but it's like it's a Torah, all the rules in it, then the Quran, all the rules in it. What about Christianity? Well, it was written by men. Even Christians don't claim that the New Testament was written by Christ, let alone God. So it has the inferior scripture. People tried it for a bit. It worked for a while. It was great when the Spanish had their global empire and they were Catholic, and then the British had their global empire and they were Protestant, and they passed it on to the Americans who considered themselves to be Christian. So, but it's coming to an end.
But I always thought that the Old Testament was written by men also. Like, I'm sure some like that's the problem.
You don't have to actually literally believe, but the narrative is that God handed the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai. That is the.
Whoa! I thought God handed the 10 Commandments to Moses on Mount Sinai.
That's part of it. So in
the Torah is 5 books that are really long. So I don't think even the narrative, I don't think they're claiming that every single word of all those 5 books were just handed down to one person who just wrote down all 5 books. Does anyone actually believe that?
You're not meant to believe that, but this is a narrative. But anyway, the Torah was written. It was written prior to the Quran, and it claims to be from God. Okay, that's what Jews.
That's what Christians do too. Theirs is just as much from God as the Old Testament is.
Yeah, but all these Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they're mortal men. They're not God, and Christians don't claim that Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, etc., who wrote the different books of the New Testament, they're not from God. But the Quran, it is actually God talking to the reader, and the Torah is.
Yes. This is why I really want to read the Quran, to be honest, because that's why I love the Bhagavad Gita so much. It's a direct transmission, and it just, like, the way it's written, the voice, how it's just so obvious. It jumps off the page. And would you like to read an extract of it to us? Your favorite bits of the Bhagavad Gita? Oh my God, there's so many good verses there. This is why I haven't really worked on my Ananda part of Ethos Ananda, because the Gita is so flawless by itself. Like, I can't even touch it. Like, even doing a summary of it is kind of like strange, because it's so short. Like, you don't really need a summary, and even if you did, it would take away from the poetic part. Oh. So first, I have to. All right, I found it. Oh, nope, that's the wrong translation. Oh, you can just go online, asitis.com.
Right.
All right, chapter 2 I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see a good one. Oh man, this is annoying to skip through.
I thought you'd have your own well-thumbed copy of the Bhagavad Gita.
I have too many. That's the problem. So, like, I have many different translations, many different versions. So, like, finding the right one, like, it's in my Kindle. That's where I read it. But on my computer here, I have to. All right, I think this one will be fine. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. It sucks. There's too many different, and it's sometimes hard to navigate to the right verse.
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
Maybe I can just randomly skip to a section. Maybe we'll get a good one.
Okay.
So Krishna talks a lot about yoga. So here's one random verse. He says, quote, "And there are even others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, and they practice stopping the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Some of them, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice." So, wow. there's some really detailed verses like that about different austerities, different, like, it's called dhyana, which is like mystical or meditation based practices. But in the end, Krishna says, give up all of this stuff, all of this fancy religious stuff, just give it all up and surrender to me. But what's really good, I think, talking about with other in a secular context, is chapter 2, where he just talks about karma and action. That's very much like Ethos. Oh, here's reincarnation in a single verse. Quote, "As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, similarly the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones." Unquote.
Right. Right. And the 18 chapters, which makes it not very long, unlike the Mahabharata.
Yeah. 18 chapters, and most chapters will have at most 70, 80 verses, sometimes 30, 40, 50.
Mm-hmm. And I have used the Bhagavad Gita, and the one was about the corruption of women and the corruption of morals.
Yeah, that's chapter 1 mostly, where Arjun is saying, yeah, I don't know how he thinks about it. I always thought that was a strange thing to say, but that's also because it reflects my own sin of not thinking of the sacred aspect of family so quickly. But Arjun says, "Oh no, I can't fight in this war, because if we just go around taking things, and we'll start taking women, and then you get all the babies that you don't want to have, all the babies that should be there." And yeah, that's chapter 1, which I regularly skip through because it just provides historical background, basically.
Right. I mean, I found a bit that sums it up in 4 lines, and it says, "In overwhelming chaos, Krishna, women of the family are corrupted, and when women are corrupted, disorder is born in society."
Yeah. So you can use a verse like that to, defend the family and defend any kind of action you want to do to maintain the family. I just forget, like, the logic of, like, what he said before that, in the storyline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, yeah, and Arjun is still talking throughout chapter 2, throughout the beginning for a while. He's really in grief. He doesn't want to kill his father. He doesn't want to kill his uncle, his guru. Obviously, like, that's why it's also an incredible story, because it's the most extreme ethical position you can ever be placed in, to kill your family. And this is very Old Testament too. Like, it reminds me of Abraham with his son. God says, kill your son for me. That's exactly the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And so Krishna says, "Oh, it's funny how they translate it sometimes too. The blessed Lord said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. Likewise, those who are wise lament not for COVID-19 or any other material crap which is not even living."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's a famous quote from. I mean, actually, it's the only one that I know, really. from the Bhagavad Gita, and somebody, and I got it from somebody who was making a point, and I asked him where he got it from, and he said he didn't know either. But now we know it's in chapter 2. Did you say, or 1?
One or two.
1 or 2.
Most of chapter 1 is Arjun saying, "Oh no, I don't want to fight. Here are all the reasons I don't want to fight," and one of them being the destruction of women and the family and society, and he talks about legitimacy too, as you were saying earlier. Like, what if we are unjustly conquering this nation, this kingdom, and we don't have legitimate rule, and we get all this sort of sinful reaction from that.
But yeah, I guess sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do, and it's to fight.
Yeah. Now, the main reason why Krishna tells Arjun to fight in this context is because Arjun is not just a man. He's a famous warrior. So, like, if in my situation, like, I'm a teacher. So, as long as I'm a teacher, according to the Gita, I do not have the right to physically harm anyone outside of a slight maybe spanking to my students when they're acting dumb. Aside from that, I don't have a duty to do anything like that unless Krishna materializes right in front of me and tells me to. Then I will.
Right. And Krishna is supposed to be an incarnation of Vishnu.
Yes, I would prefer to use the word avatar, but yeah, that's basically it.
And Vishnu is the preserver.
Vishnu is the one God, but he has like his main function that we see is preserving, but so avatar means like a personal incarnation. That's basically an avatar there's at least 9 different avatars of Vishnu. Rama is also one, the Buddha is also one, and then there's like a fish avatar, a boar avatar, a turtle avatar in previous ages.
So complicated. The one God idea is much more efficient, isn't it?
No, this is one God though. Vishnu is the one God, but I'm trying to show how. So this is called polymorphic monotheism, where there's one God, Vishnu. He is the only one true God, but due to his unlimited potency, of course, he shows himself in many different ways. As far as the creation of the universe, there's 3 different Vishnus there's 3 different aspects of Vishnu that create the universe. And those Vishnus, I don't even remember their name because it's really long in Sanskrit, but even in that situation, these impersonal, like what's the word? I mean, it's still just aspects of the one Vishnu that is the one God. So you can think about it like it's
Brahman,
just more colorful.
or is it Atman? I keep confusing the two.
Krishna is Paramatma. Para means super or meta. So Krishna and Vishnu lives and manifests as the super soul, the soul within the individual soul, and the soul eternally witnessing the individual soul and the controller of the individual soul. We are Atman. You are Atman. I am Atman. And because we are little parts of the super soul, and we are also eternal. We are also full of bliss and full of knowledge. That's our true nature. And one layer outside of this pure soul that we are is our ego, and then our intelligence, and then our mind, and then our senses, and then our body. Those are layers of the onion, right? So the more you are caught in the external layers, the more you are enslaved to bondage in material world, samsara.
So are you identify as Hindu, do you? Although you are in fact Jewish?
I don't like the word Hindu.
Okay.
But also the problem is, like I know what Hindu actually means, and most people don't. Hindu is an ethnic word. So you basically have to be brown-skinned from India, then you're a Hindu. Even if you're like a Jain or a Sikh or something. But I would say I'm a Vaishnava, and that's just a conjugation of the word Vishnu. I worship Vishnu. My favorite avatar of Vishnu is the one I'm looking at right now, Krishna, who talks to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That's my favorite embodiment and expression of Vishnu. But there are many others that are also excellent. And Vishnu is Vishnu at the end of the day. And Allah is Vishnu. And Yahweh is Vishnu.
Okay.
That's Vaishnava, and that's the best word.
Okay, so Vishnu is also creator as well as preserver, or is there a separate creator god in Hinduism?
Lord Brahma is the creator god of this material universe, but Vishnu creates the background from which Brahma can be born. So Vishnu kind of creates the ontological, spiritual reality, and then Brahma is born from literally the navel of Vishnu. There's a lotus flower that grows from Vishnu, reclining in the eternal ocean. And from that lotus flower, Brahma is born. And from Brahma is our universe, our material universe. And Brahma is a demigod. So he has a finite lifetime, just as we do. But his finite lifetime is in the billions or trillions of years.
Is Brahma the universe? Or meant to represent the universe?
No. Brahma is as I said, the creator of the universe. And he's a demigod. He's a personal being, just as we are. But, he's just way above our pay grade.
Right.
The material universe, I actually saw, Duvid actually recommended me watch this stream where these guys actually make a 3D model of the universe according to the Vedas, and it's like a lot of people interpret it as supporting the flat earth theory because it describes disks going around each other, and then, oh my God, it just gets really complicated.
I know. I mean that's the thing about Hinduism. It gets really complicated. And it's like, do I really have to remember it? And all this time, it's like, isn't it just easier to just say, Allah did it all, and just.
Yeah. That's what I do, Claire. That's exactly what I do. That's why you could see or you could hear that I got frustrated as soon as I brought it up, because it just gets all bleh. So at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, I've got my Krishna, I've got my mantra, like that's it. Like all the other stuff is extra stuff, which to me really doesn't matter. It's like a story, It's like watching a Harry Potter movie. Like it's more than that. It's more important than that, but it's not practical. The stuff that's practical to my life, to my spiritual life, that's what I actually care about and can talk about in great detail, although that will typically get very personal very quickly, so I may not want to talk about it, but yeah.
So basically there is a triumvirate or trimurti of gods, and there are three gods responsible for the creation, upkeep, and destruction of the world. So because there was a creator god, there would be a destroyer god.
Right. But we just need to clarify, the world means our material world. So Lord Shiva is the demigod in charge of destruction of this material world. But Lord Shiva is also, like Lord Brahma, a demigod and a personal being, just as we are, with a finite material lifetime, which is once again in the order of billions or trillions of years. And you can actually find out exactly what that number is, but it's it's in that category of stuff that's just like interesting, but kind of out there.
But I mean, the idea is that I guess they're saying there are three elements to creation, and if there is a creator, there must be a destroyer because
Yeah, that's otherwise, how can it be created? Or if you create something eternal, you didn't create it because it's eternal, right? So when we're talking about creation, destruction, all this is material reality. Spiritual reality is eternal, and it is God himself in different energies. There's no creation there. It's just, oh Jesus,
okay. But I suppose people. I mean, before we go, I don't want. It must be quite late for you. But Dharma, I guess people might still have difficulties with because you use it as a to describe probably a lot of ideas that plenty of people are unfamiliar with. So. Because I wrote down somewhere that you described something as dharmic, and I can't remember now. What it really means.
Dharma actually comes up many times in the Gita, and there's many different ways to conjugate that word dharma. Like Sanskrit is where we get conjugation from. That's why English and French and Spanish uses conjugation. It's all from Sanskrit. And the Sanskrit conjugation is way more intense and dynamic than any of the other ones. But so you could say dharma in a mundane sense means your duty or your occupation. For example, I have to go in a half hour because my dharma is to teach English to a little Chinese kid. And then there's the super meta sense of dharma, which is our eternal occupation as living entities that are part and parcel of God. And our eternal dharma is, you could say, sacrifice or devotion or service. And we have one word to actually describe all of that, which is bhakti, which translates as loving devotional service. So, and for each, there's only three yogas really that Krishna talks about: karma yoga, the yoga of action; jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, that's Gnosticism, that's philosophy, that's jnana yoga; and then bhakti yoga, which is the personal, loving, devotional, religious stuff that every religion has. So the 5 times a day that you pray as a Muslim, that would count as bhakti yoga, I think. And the rosary, that's bhakti yoga.
Right. So really, it's sort of religion and the practice of it and the following of rules, virtue, morality.
Dharma, even in the mundane sense, you can translate into English as religion. You can do a direct translation, actually, and you can just say Dharma means religion. That's a valid translation.
Or duty. When I think of what you said about duty calls me to leave this in half an hour because I have an obligation to the person I teach.
Yes. So we have material duties, spiritual duties, and religion is kind of like is your spiritual duty, so to speak. And so the religion of Hinduism, when most people talk about Hinduism as a religion, what they're talking about is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal Dharma. That's what the religion is. So for one Hindu, their conception of Sanatan Dharma is Lord Shiva or Lord Ganesh, or there's so many. That's where it gets all confusing, right? But it's all comes together under the umbrella of Sanatan Dharma. That's the actual religion aspect.
Right. But I think, I see laws as a kind of vessel. It's like, yeah, we want to be, all these things, and sometimes a vessel is a different shape. It could be square, it could be, all kinds of shape. But as long as it keeps the group together and there are no leaks and it doesn't crack, and, then because I think the whole idea of morality is about how we choose our leaders and how we behave towards each other in order to, remain healthy as, the nation state, or what you want to call society, or, tribe, or whatever. And you can only judge how successful your religion is by how it manages to keep the group together. And for Christianity, it has failed because, for the average Christian, they're not exercised about these ideas. They don't care because they can't believe what they're expected to believe as a Christian.
Claire, I agree, but then compared to what? Compared to the Reformed Judaism that I grew up with, where it's just like, a few days a year we do a few things, and that's our religion. Like that's even lower of a farce, I think.
Well, but that is a problem with Reformed Judaism because I guess the Orthodox Jews say, well, it's just made up crap. By these German Jews who thought that they thought they'd update the Torah, and that's why they're cursed forever because of.
I agree. Look, I totally agree. It's made up crap. But until all the Jews can come together and agree on that, the rest of us have to accept that Reformed Judaism is a legitimate kind of Judaism, right?
Oh, well, so you're saying they're legitimate because they're more Reformed Jews than they're Orthodox Jews? Are you?
Well,
is that where you're going?
If I Google Reformed Judaism, I'll have a whole Wikipedia page on it as if it's a real thing. So I have to accept that it's a real thing until someone can either prove to me definitively that it's not, or if there's a consensus among Jews that it's not.
Well, I suppose that there'll be a whole bunch of Gentiles saying, well, these Jews, they're not God's chosen people. They're only, there's so few of them compared to, we are the rest of humanity. And I guess, it is this sort of pyramid saying that the apex doesn't exist, or they can get rid of it, but then it wouldn't be a pyramid anymore if they, broke off the top bit of the pyramid. So I'm kind of saying that if you want to believe in the Abrahamic God, you have to accept the narrative of God having divided, humanity into Jews and Gentiles, and giving them two revelations: Torah for Jews, Quran for Gentiles, and then maybe we can make a bit more sense of it through working out what the laws are. So I guess that's why it triggers these Gentiles so much when Jews talk about they know it triggers the Gentiles, so they don't talk about the Noahide laws. And my position is that they should talk about it because it's necessary now when so many people have don't even have the idea of what religion is for or what it is, and they clearly don't think, Christianity isn't working because it's a religion that gives liberals the idea that they're going to go to heaven.
I love how you say liberal like that. There's a couple things I want to say. First, I think since you asked me about the Gita, and I really appreciate that, I will simply just share my all-time favorite verse. It's one of the only ones I've actually memorized. Mm-hmm. And it may not be relevant, but I think it's my favorite verse because it really shows to me the love that God has for us. Krishna says in chapter 9, verse 26, quote, "If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, a water, I will accept it," unquote. So we also might need the context for this. In previous verses, he says, if you eat anything, even just a beautiful little apple that you grew yourself or whatever, if you eat anything without offering it to someone, a demigod or to Vishnu, or or without saying thanks, if you just eat it without offering it, you're only eating sin. That's all you're doing. You're just sinning. And then here he's saying, you don't need to do anything fancy. This is like the whole attitude for Krishna throughout the whole Gita. You don't need to do some fancy yoga, some fancy thing. Take a leaf. Focus on the love and devotion of it, and I will accept it, and I will save you, and all that stuff. So that's what I love about Krishna. Now, I also want to say that, okay, first of all, I renounce and repudiate. I am not a Jew. Second of all, second of all, look, I can show you my Krishna stuff right here. Check. Hold on. Hold on.
I don't think you can't be an ex-Jew in the same way that I can be. Well, you can't change your race.
Well, if Judaism is a race, then maybe I am a Jew then. I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about religion. Now, look at these beads. Maybe you can't see, but you see that there's like a yellowish tint to them?
The beads you were wearing as a necklace, right?
Not as the necklace I'm holding in my hand. Is it not showing up on the screen?
I can see that now. Yeah. The prayer beads or something, are they?
Yes. Basically prayer beads. These were white when I got them. They are yellow because I've chanted on them for thousands and thousands of times. How many times have I observed the Passover or any other Jewish stuff? Like 0 times. Mm-hmm. So, like, you can only say I'm Jewish in a ethnic or religious sense. That's the only way it'll work. In every other way, I'm a Vaishnava. I go to a Hindu temple and I chant a Sanskrit mantra and it's like if you want me to be a Jew, that's fine, but I don't see how that can hold up in any sort of theological or spiritual sense.
Well, I just want to talk about that because I have this great idea that I thought would protect Jews by proposing, because I have proposed that there should be a register of Jews, so people can Jews who want to be Jews can get themselves on the register, and then when they don't want to be Jewish anymore, they can get themselves struck off the register, and then they become.
What about Adolf and his anti-Semite friends? You sure you want to have a register written explicitly, a list somewhere?
The thing is, he found them anyway. And also, for the right of return, Jews have to somehow, have papers saying that Mum is a Jewess, and that they've been, Jewish for however many generations. So they keep their own records anyway. But I'm saying, if you can be on a register, that you can get struck off it, and then you can become an ex-Jew. And that was what actually Gilad Atzmon wanted, the jazz musician. So, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he got into trouble for being a self-hating Jew.
I don't want to talk about this because I know there's literally nothing you can say to change my mind on that. But
I'm not trying to change your mind.
That's fine. I just don't care anyway. It's so, lame.
What is lame about you being Jewish or sorry?
The idea that I'm a Jew right now. It's so gay.
but people are obsessed about it. I think people are obsessed about Jews. I mean, they blame them for everything. It's like it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
I am not gay. That's my point. Those other people can be all, this is really important to us. I'm not in that at all. Even when I was a Jew, when I was a bar mitzvah in high school, I was very much into this, and self-deprecating kind of humor stuff. Because I'm not I have zero attachments to that whole culture. The matzah is kind of nice. That's the best that I can say. And Israel is fun. There's good Israeli people. That's all I can say. That's the only. Yes, Jen, you're right. Claire is obsessed with Jews. Moving on.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to say something controversial, which I should have said earlier. The Western religions, all of them, all of the Abrahamic religions, regardless of how you cut them up, they are all inferior to the Eastern religions as a whole. Why? Because we need to judge a tree by its fruits. And religion and spirituality has a few things as a fundamental tenet universally. One of them being compassion, helping others, kindness, etc. So when we look at all the 2,500 years of Buddhism, how many holy wars were there? How many times did one group of Buddhists say to another group of Buddhists, "Oh, you're in our land, we're going to cut your face off, rah!" How many times did the Hindus do that? Almost zero. Like, I'm sure it's happened sometimes, but were there any crusades, inquisitions? Like,
well, it's the Christians, right? They're the ones who had a European wars of religion.
And not the Muslims? Not the Muslims
No,
with
no,
their
no.
little...
I don't think it was about religion. It was really about territory and empire. But, you know, they don't have a sort of Middle Eastern wars of religion. They just didn't have it.
Yeah, it's just part of their ethos. It's part of their nature. Like, it's either... But the religions they have are an intimate part of who they are. So we can't really divorce the two.
Yeah, because religion, it is, whether we acknowledge it or not, it becomes part of our culture. And unfortunately
Yes.
for the West, the unofficial religion is liberalism, and that's why we don't like the culture. That's why it makes us uneasy. And
Oh, Claire, I think I got it. So the Eastern religions, Buddha, well, it's basically just two, and they're both from India. Their aspect, their attitude towards spirituality is very simple. It takes many different turns, but at its essence, it is escape the matrix. That's what the Eastern spiritual path is, whether it's Taoism or Buddhism or even Judo or like Kung Fu. How do you actually practice an Eastern religion? You climb a mountain, you find a monastery, you shave your head, and you just do something away from everyone else. That's like what it is. The Western religions really want to be in this world, doing Tikkun Olam or doing a holy war or doing, like, you see the difference? I think that's like the difference that I'm referring to when I say one is inferior or superior than another.
well,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think it's part. The three global empires have been, well, Christian or nominally Christian. So that's probably something to do with their religion too, even though it has failed. I mean, obviously, we can analyze why it became so successful and why eventually it failed. But that would require a bit of knowledge about the history of Christianity. So I think that there is a grand plan, really, in a way. So you have all these global empires that have failed. What's the obvious one to replace it? I'm saying it ain't the Eastern religions, because the Eastern religions have not been particularly successful in empire building. Not really.
Well,
because it doesn't come with the rule of law.
Right. As a religion, yes, that's my point. That's what Eastern religion is. It's anti-empire. It's anti every kind of... It's anti-living in the material world, as in any sort of capacity. Now, for me, as a follower of the Gita, well, this is what karma yoga is. It means doing whatever work you have, but just as a way to service God. So if I want to live in the world, I can, but there's still at the foundation of it a strong urge to GTFO, of this whole reality, not just this society, but this planet, and not just this planet, but all the planets. Anyway, I actually have to go because I'm teaching soon.
All right, all right. So thanks for joining me for, oh my goodness, over 3 hours. Well, I've enjoyed it very much. Perhaps we can have another chat on similar subjects again.
Yes, I enjoyed it too. I don't know how productive it was, but yes, thanks for chatting with me, Claire. It was good.
Take care. All right.
Yes, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.